All right.
Welcome, everybody, to the May 2023 meeting of Manhattan Community Board 1's Land Use, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee. I'm Patrick Cannell, chair of the committee, joined by my co-chair, Laura Starr, along with the chair of Community Board 1, Tammy Meltzer, and our district manager, Lucian Reynolds, is with us as well to help out and keep us in line. We've got a pretty packed agenda tonight, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I also want to be respectful of everyone's opinions, but I just want to be pretty clear at the outset that given the gravity of the at least two of the three items that are on our agenda, the expected amount of interest in those, we're going to need to make sure that we limit comments and debate, and I'll talk a little bit about that once we get going. But first item on our agenda and our first presentation will be on World Trade Center Site 5. Toby Giussemi from the Empire State Development Corporation. She's an AVP of Real Estate. Toby, I'm going to turn it over to you to begin your presentation. What we'll do after your presentation, Toby, is open it up for questions from first committee members, then members of Community Board 1 in general, then members of the public. And I'll talk a little bit more again before we get started in that part of the program. But Toby, if you want to take it away and introduce anybody who might be joining in your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. And Chair Cannell, thank you for having me here for tonight's meeting. I'm joined by my colleagues at Empire State Development, as well as representatives from the Port Authority. It's a privilege to be before the Land Use Committee this evening to discuss the World Trade Center Site 5 project. Of course, this isn't the first time that we've presented the project to you. We've been in public discussions around the public approvals process for the World Trade Center Site 5 project for what feels like a number of times now, but it's really been the last 2.5 years since conditional designation of the development team in February 2021. Recognizing that while we've been in conversations on the project for the last 2.5 years, it's possible that this might be the first introduction for some on the World Trade Center Site 5 project. So I'm just going to give a quick microwave version of a background on the project and then head into the more substantive details of this evening's update. So World Trade Center Site 5, 130 Liberty Street, is the location of the former Deutsche Bank building that was damaged during the 9/11 attacks. And LMDC, which is the Lower Manhattan Development Corp., used federal funds via the Housing and Urban Development Corporation for the federal government to acquire, remediate, and clear Site 5. In 2004, the World Trade Center General Project Plan contemplated commercial and/or hotel use for Site 5. And in 2006, there was a memorandum of understanding between the Lower Manhattan Development Corp. And the Port Authority, under which the Port Authority agreed to provide for parcels that it owned at the center of the World Trade Center campus to allow for the development of the 9/11 Museum and Memorial, and in exchange, it received the financial interest in World Trade Center Site 5. A few years later, in 2019, there was another memorandum of understanding between LMDC and the Port Authority to jointly issue a request for proposal that considered and allowed for either commercial use, which is as of right at the World Trade Center Site 5 GPP permitted, or mixed use development, which would require modifications to the general project plan. In June of 2019, that RFP was released. In February 2021, after a competitive process, a development team and a proposed project was conditionally designated. That development team include Brookfield Properties, the Bar Development, Silverstein Properties, and Omni New York. The key project elements included a mixed-use tower with approximately 1,200 rental residential units, a community facility, office space, retail, and a connection to the adjacent Liberty Park. The appraised value for the site is $249 million. And the annual base rent for the project, which would be paid to the Port Authority, is the greater of $12.5 million, escalating 2% annually, or 21% of cash flow before debt service. The governing documents for the proposed project include a 99-year lease, a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the City of New York, an affordable housing regulatory agreement with HCR, a set of mixed-use design guidelines, and supporting transactional documents. As noted, we've been discussing this project for some time. In February 2021, there was conditional designation of the development team and the proposed project. In April 2021, there was a community advisory committee that was established. And in November of 2021, there was a start of the public approvals process for modifications to the general project plan and the supporting environmental assessment. In April 2022, the general project plan modifications, as well as the environmental assessment, were adopted. And in July of 2022, we started the public process for the approvals of the proposed project and real estate transaction. There was a public hearing in September of 2022 and a comment period that was open through October 2022. In light of this, we expect moving forward with presenting the project to the public sponsor board of directors and board of commissioners in May of 2023, so later this month. And I'd like to flag that through this process, since conditional designation, there have been over 30 public engagement meetings, many of which included presentations to Community Board 1, engagement with the Community Advisory Committee, engagement with local stakeholders, such as the Coalition for 100% Affordable World Trade Center Site 5, as well as engagement with local elected officials. We're committed to continued ongoing public engagement through the public approvals process, including furthering discussions with the CAC, the Community Board, and other stakeholders. I'd like to note that the proposed actions that the public sponsors will be taking later this month will be LMDC, which is the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, and ESD will take actions related to the proposed project and real estate transaction, which would mean modifications to the general project plan that allow for the zoning overrides for the proposed project, the site disposition, which is LMDC transferring ownership of the site to ESD and ESD acquiring the site, and then ESD entering into the long-term ground lease for the proposed project with the conditionally designated developer. The project documents include the essential terms of the real estate transaction and an initial agreement with the conditionally designated developer. The Port Authority Board of Commissioners will take action on the financial terms of the proposed project and completing the MOU that I'd mentioned earlier with LMDC. After board actions, the project will be presented to the Public Authorities Control Board. Now, understanding that affordable housing has been a key focus of the project over the last 2.5 years, the project was introduced with approximately 1,200 units at a minimum requirement of 25% of the units being affordable at an average of area median income of 50%. So it was 25% of the residential units, approximately 300 units, at an average of 50% of area median income. That means a family of 4 with an income of approximately $66,000 would be able to apply for affordable housing at the project. In response to what we've heard from the community and from stakeholders, we propose introducing the project with increased affordability of the same total count of residential units, which is approximately 1,200 units, but with an increase of additional 5%. So that's approximately 360 units of affordable housing at an average area median income of 85%, which means a family of 4 earning approximately $113,000 would be eligible to apply for the available affordable units at the World Trade Center Site 5 campus. And that's a split according to the various AMI bands that's reflected on the screen. It allows for a range from 60% of area median income, which is 120 units approximately, to a split of 85% area median income and 110% of area median income. We understand the desire and the push, the demand for increased affordability at the project site, but without a subsidy source being identified, it's important that we consider the scale of the need for increase in affordability at a project in World Trade Center Site 5. So as I noted, the project was originally introduced with a 25% affordability requirement. That's 300 units with an average AMI 50% without a direct cash subsidy. The proposed project that we're seeking to introduce to the public sponsor boards would be 30%, an average of 85% of AMI, and would allow for an option to increase affordability at the project if a subsidy source is identified by April 2024. Now, just for discussion purposes and to be able to provide an examples of what increasing affordability at the project site could look like in terms of subsidy need, to get the project to 35% affordable, which would mean approximately 420 units at an average of 100% of area median income, there's an approximate subsidy need of $58 million. To get the project to 37.5% affordable, which would equal about a 50% increase in the affordability from the original project, there's an approximate $120 million subsidy need. To get the project to 50% affordable, which would mean 600 of the 1,200 residential units would be affordable at an average of 50% of AMI, which is the original AMI average that the project was introduced at, we'd need approximately $500 million in public subsidy to be able to increase affordability at the project. Now, the second row here is the proposed project that we seek to introduce to the public sponsor boards for approvals, and that doesn't require a cash subsidy from the public in order to be able to fund 360 units of affordable housing at World Trade Center Site 5. I understand and I appreciate the concerns that have been raised from the electeds and from local stakeholders with regards to increasing affordability at the project. Our hope is to be able to continue the discussions on increasing affordability at the project within a time frame that's noted in the materials that allows for there to be continued discussions about identifying a subsidy source while also ensuring that a minimum of 30% of affordable units, approximately 360 units of affordable housing, are delivered at World Trade Center Site 5. I'm going to stop here, and Chair, thank you for affording us the time to start off the meeting by presenting this project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Toby, thank you. Appreciate the concise presentation. So, as I said, here's what we're going to do. I know there's a lot of interest in this update in this project. So we're going to go first by Land Use, Zoning, and Economic Development Committee members, then members of Community Board 1 otherwise, and then members of the public. I'm going to ask, because again, we are packed tonight. Please, if you are feeling something or want to say something and it's already been said, please merely just say, I agree with Joe or Steve or whatever. All right. We really don't want to waste a lot of time, with all due respect to the importance of the issue, repeating a lot of things that have been said in the past. And we will come to a consensus about what, if anything, that the committee wants to do at the end of the discussion. So let me pull up my list. First, I'm seeing Laura, and being co-chair, I'm going to defer to her first. So Laura, I'm going to go to you first, and then Vicky Cameron after that.
Toby, could you show the chart again, please? And can you explain how you calculate, for example, the additional, okay, so to double the amount of affordable units to get 600 instead of 300 is $500 million. What is that? That covers both the financing and the cost to build the units, or how is that math done?
Sure, that's a good question, and thank you for seeking that clarification. When you're looking at the subsidy need for the affordable units versus the market rate units, you're thinking about the rents that would be collected at the project site. So there's a subsidy need to be able to offset the cost difference between what you would earn from the affordable units and what one would earn from the market rate units, as well as considering the cost of developing the project site.
Over what period is that? Like, for how many years of that subsidy is this calculate? Like, explain the math. if you can.
Thank you for that. And I realize that at a certain point in my presentation, I may have not explicitly said this, but the affordable units that are proposed at World Trade Center Site 5 are permanent affordable units. And so in looking at an analysis of what the difference is between market rate rents versus affordable rents, one would have to consider at least the full duration of the lease term, which is 99 years. So there's an extended window of time that you'd have to consider for looking at the subsidy that would be required to preserve the permanent affordability at the project.
So that $500 million represents doing the math over 99 years.
I think the feasibility is looking at the math at least through the first decade. It's quite difficult to look at what it would look like for 99 years, but typically one would look at the first decade and an analysis of the first 10 years and the math of the rents that would be collected through that period.
Is that what this is, the first 10 years?
$500
million?
I don't want to speak definitively on that just because these analysis has been done for a number of different scenarios. But the number that you see here reflects what the subsidy need is to be at least able to present the project.
Right. I don't want to take up too much time, but I would really like to understand the math and be able to check the math. And like, especially if the state is asking us to come up with money magically. I mean, I don't know. Look how old I am. Do you know how many meetings I've been to where the math hasn't been explained and it's hard to trust the math?
Sure, I can understand that, Laura. I'd like to note that the coalition and as well as other stakeholders had carried out an independent feasibility study that considered what would be required to deliver 100% affordable building at the site at either approximately 1,600 units or 800 units. And the subsidy need that was identified in that independent analysis also presented figures that are similar to what you see on your screen. For the 1,600 unit analysis, I believe the subsidy need was approximately at least $600 million. And so these numbers aren't arbitrary and they're not done just to misrepresent what the subsidy need is.
I know that. I just want to
at this scale.
I just, as like somebody involved with urban design, I really like to understand the math. Anyway, I'm going to let somebody else speak, but I would like to better understand how the math is done.
Laura, I think that's an important point. And Toby, I'd like to piggyback on that and also request that we understand that math. You may not know that right now in this presentation. I get it, but we'd like to follow up and understand how that math is calculated, because there's a big difference between suggesting that there's a public subsidy of $500 million that's needed in, I don't know, let's say one budget of the General Assembly next year, of the state budget next year, versus something that gets spread out over 99 years or even 10 years. It's a huge difference in terms of how that need can be funded. So I think understanding how that math was arrived at is really important and a very good question, and I'd like to know the answer too.
Sure.
So we'll follow up with you on that. All right, Vicki, I saw you took your hand down, so I'm going to just roll with that.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't. First of all,
okay.
I'm having some technical difficulty. It keeps showing my hand up when I don't put it up.
All right. So
But
we'll let you go,
now-
and then Jill
no,
Goodkind,
no,
and then
no.
Justine.
No, Patrick. But now that I have this moment, may I just ask a question or make a statement?
So I was
Okay.
recognizing Vicki, then Jill, then Justine.
Thank you. Toby, I just wanted to clarify something that public subsidy is required because the private developers are sticking to a profit range they refuse to lower, correct?
That's a very strong statement, and I have a hard time giving you
Well, I'm asking, it's a question, really.
a supportive answer. So this, as I'd mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, and I'll just temporarily stop sharing so it's easier to your participants. This project is based on a memorandum of understanding between the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation and the Port Authority. And the Port Authority gave up a significant portion of the World Trade Center Site 5, of the World Trade Center campus, to be able to allow for the delivery of the Museum, Memorial, and Performing Arts Center. And in entering into an MOU with LMDC, the idea was that the Port Authority has the financial interest in World Trade Center Site 5. So the financial terms of this deal is that we have a project that delivers a minimum base rent that ensures that the Port Authority receives its financial interest in the deal, and a project that is also financially viable to support the payment of that minimum base rent. As you know, the Port Authority is the entity that's responsible for various forms of transit and infrastructure in the metropolitan region. So this isn't dependent only on the developer's decision, but it's based on and rooted in the memorandum of understanding between LMDC and the Port Authority.
So just to confirm that the Port Authority also has a profit range that they need to make on this project. Otherwise,
The Port Authority is to receive the value of the site, and the value of the site is what has been presented to you as part of this project. And the minimum base rent, the annual minimum base rent for the project is $12.5 million.
right. So I just want to conclude by saying that all the stakeholders, whether we be a public authority like the Port Authority or the private developer, are essentially driving the cost of the building, the profit range that they expect to make, and in turn, we are asked or told that if there is no subsidy, then none of them will budge. So we need to find public funds to subsidize this project.
Well, Vicky, the public sponsors have been engaged over the last 2.5 years in
Oh, I
discussions
know.
related to increasing affordability at this project. And even if one were to, move away from the significantly high subsidy number for a 50% scenario, to get to a 35% scenario, there's a subsidy need of approximately $58 million, depending on the AMI bands and average that one were to present. And these discussions are ones that we've been actively engaged in over the last 2.5 years, and seeking to be able to preserve the hundreds of affordable units that this project is proposing at this time. What we are presenting to the public sponsor boards is a project that delivers a minimum of 30% affordability, that's approximately 360 units, and still opens the window for continued discussions for increasing affordability at the project. So this doesn't close the door to us discussing ways and engaging with stakeholders to find a source for increasing the affordability at the project via public subsidy. It allows for us to have a path forward to be able to preserve the 360 units of affordable housing at this proposed project, as well as continue the discussion and engagement with stakeholders on how to find a subsidy source for the project.
Thank you, Toby. Just for me to conclude to my board and our community, some 1,200 units are being offered, right? 300 of them are affordable. And yet again, this is not enough. And last thing we need is more market rate. And the fact that it is going back down to taxpayers' money subsidizing a project. Thank you for being here and explaining this. Thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Vicky. Jill, then Justine.
Thank you. Hi, Toby. I have to say that it is absolutely shameful to say that you are increasing the amount of affordable units and cutting out the lowest AMI range. That is shameful. To say it's an increase in the amount of units and to cut out the people who most need affordable housing in this city, and to kind of be able to sit there and be proud that you're increasing the number while cutting out the lowest AMI is absolutely unforgivable and shameful, and I have nothing more to say on that. Thank you.
Justine.
Thanks so much, Patrick. And thank you, Toby, for presenting. So I agree with what Jill said, but I do want to add something to it. Number one, in none of your presentations or discussions are you making a carve out or recognizing the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5 World Trade Centers as a priority of first responders, 9/11 survivors, and their children, as well as seniors. And that is a disturbing fact and there's no point in leaving that out. And that's the disturbing fact that it's left out. But the other point that I'd like to raise on this is to show, even with your $500 million subsidy for the 50%, is it AMI? So you're saying, yeah, to go to up from 300 to 600 units, but you can't give me an idea of how long that subsidy is spread. Let's assume that's over 99 years, the 500 million. And if it is, it implies a subsidy of $16,835 per unit of the 300 additional per year, which comes to $1,402 a month per unit per year for those, I'm sorry, per month for those 300 additional units. It's a modest subsidy. And it's a wise investment of public funds with a very attractive rate of return because you're housing people that need to be housed. It just boggles my mind that the LMDC, the Port Authority, guys, they're all public agencies. So you are public. The public funds are you, number one. Number two, I mean, I suppose it seems to me new information, but maybe I've missed it. I'm glad to hear you say that you're keeping the door opened to increase the level and try to find some other funding. But I really would love to get the answers to the question that Laura raised and that Eileen raised about the length of time. Okay, because that is a very important factor. If we need $500 million tomorrow, that's very different than $500 million over 100 years, like I just put forth. Number one. And then number two, once we have those numbers, I also think it's incumbent upon us to incumbent upon you all to go to the winners of your RFP to determine how and if they would be willing to subsidize some of that little difference per apartment. And that's all I have to say, but thank you.
So you just tried to write. My apologies. I don't know if I'm cutting anyone off, but Justine.
No, go ahead, Toby.
Thank you for making those points. I'm coordinating with my colleagues now, and I do think that it's best to be able to offer the details that Laura and the chair echoed with regards to the math for the subsidy need, but it's been flagged for me that the subsidy need is an upfront need and it's not one that's spread through the 99-year term of the lease. And so if one were to identify a subsidy for increasing affordability at the project, it would be required upfront. But I think it's best if we offer a more detailed response so that one can understand this complicated calculations and the subsidy need. I appreciate the committee's request for that information and think that we can find a way to offer those levels of details to you. And Justine, I understand the statement that you made with regards to reference to 9/11 victims' families and first responders. That's something that we continue to engage in discussions on. As you may or may not be aware, the project's affordable housing requirements would be governed by a regulatory agreement with the state's affordable housing agency, with HCR, and we're in discussions with the state's affordable housing agency and their housing experts to be able to determine what it would look like to be able to provide that form of community preference. And so, given that as we go through this approvals process and as we flesh out the details of those documents, there's an opportunity to look at those, there's an opportunity to look at that, providing that preference. So I don't want to speak too prematurely, but as we have that information, we'll be able to share how it would impact, the total number of affordable units that would be delivered at the project.
I appreciate that. And Toby, one more follow-up question based on what you said, if I could. If the 500 million is needed to build the tower, right, to start the project, you need that you need that source and to know where it's coming from now. Is there going to be an additional cost per year then? And if you don't know the answer now, that's fine, but I'd like to know.
When you say additional cost per year, what do you mean?
So assuming if to jump from 30 affordable units, 30% affordable to 50% affordable in your chart there, it's $500 million. Once we pay that 500 million, what else do we have to pay?
There would be no additional subsidy
Okay.
that would be required.
Okay, thank you. So that makes it clear. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks,
Patrick.
Justine. And Toby, thanks to you and your team for getting at least an initial answer to us on that question so quickly. That's very appreciated. And we'll gladly take more information on how that math works out, how the financing works out. Richard Corman and then Tammy. Richard, are you able to?
All right, yes, I
There we
thought I
are.
unmuted. I did not. Toby, hi. Nice to see you again. I want to first clarify something about the feasibility study that you mentioned and referenced, the Coalition for 100% Affordable Housing at 5 World Trade Center feasibility study. We did have extensive debates as to that study with the Port Authority and other members of the team. And I have to disagree with your characterization of the cost per apartment. The study that we believe is appropriate for the alternative that we presented, while certainly not inexpensive, is about half of what you've presented on a per unit basis, maybe even a little less than half. I'm not saying it's insignificant or trivial, but I just want to be clear publicly that it isn't at the same level that you've been citing here.
Richard,
The
sorry
one-
to interrupt you, but just to be clear, when you say we've cited, you're talking about the 100% Affordable Coalition and not the Community Board, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thanks.
Well, no, what I meant, we've cited, I think that's what I meant. The coalition feasibility study was provided an alternative which has a lower cost, significantly lower cost per unit subsidy requirement than what was presented here today for this project. That's what I'm trying to clarify. I certainly have to just agree, as you've requested, Patrick, that it's essential for this community and for the agencies to recognize that the lower income units are really fundamental to what we need in this community, which is a rebuilding of the diversity, economic and racial diversity that previously existed and that is so badly lost here. And so increasing the levels of income that you've proposed in this alternative is really not the direction that we in the coalition at least would want to go. And I think some of the people here that their opinions are being represented as well. And lastly, I would say we did ask you, as you know, in the press release from the elected officials and other supporting people, to wait and not proceed at this point, so that we can continue in collaboration and try to locate the kinds of funds that we're talking about. And I will, in fact, now lastly, thank you for offering, as you did at the CAC, access to the models and the math that are producing the information that you're presenting here today. It's really essential for us to have that, either on our own, but preferably in dialogue with you and the other agencies in locating the kinds of subsidies that are necessary to really generate the needed affordable housing in this building. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you for noting the need for clarification on the coalition's feasibility study. The feasibility study, as I'd mentioned, presented two options for 100% affordable buildings. I believe with 33% or 1/3, each third of the project, reflecting different levels of incomes for the project site. And even if one were not to include the values that we discuss in our follow-up subsequent working sessions on the feasibility study, the 1,600 unit model required a $600 million subsidy, and the 800 and approximately 10 unit model, I believe, required 154 or $164 million subsidy, but didn't include the appraised land value. It didn't look at some key essential terms that would be required for one to consider the subsidy need for the project. So we are happy to continue the discussion with the coalition and with stakeholders around what that subsidy need is for delivering affordable housing at the World Trade Center Site 5 project. And I appreciate your concern and your note that what is being proposed isn't sufficient. And as it relates to the timing, we do think that affording the opportunity to continue the discussions around increasing the subsidy through the next year is a key step forward to securing the 300 to 360 units of affordable housing that are being proposed. And we're happy to, again, continue the discussions around increasing affordability beyond that point.
Thanks, Toby. Going to recognize Tammy Meltzer, Chair CV1.
Hey, Patrick, thanks so much. I'm actually going to wait to go last. I have some questions that I certainly want to get out, but I'd like the members of the public to go before I wrap up and finish on that.
Okay.
What I did not hear in Toby's presentation was there was information that she's promising to provide, but will that information come before any vote by any board?
Yes, we can coordinate being able to provide I believe the request is for the additional information about how the math for the subsidy is calculated. Could follow up with the team about being able to provide that information before the board votes.
Toby, when in May is the first of any board votes? I think it's LMDC and.
Sure. So the sequencing of the board actions would be LMDC, which is the Lower Manhattan Development Corp, and then ESD, which is Empire State Development, and then the Port Authority. I can feel what the response will be once I say this, but we're still working through the details for finalizing the dates for the LMDC and ESD meetings. There's just a need to make sure that we have quorum, as I'm sure the committee and the community board can appreciate. So I don't want to speak in advance of our process and provide details that may have not yet been finalized, and that's not my role to provide. But I am committed, and the project team is committed, that once we do have the notice for both meetings available, they will be distributed, they'll be posted publicly, made available to the community board and to the community advisory committee, as well as the elected officials.
So what is
Toby,
the
what's the usual?
Yeah,
You got it.
Patrick and I are on the same page. What is the required notification period?
Our meeting details are usually provided approximately 72 hours in advance of the meeting, but we typically do a week before. But again, I just want to stress that we are actively working on finalizing the details of both meetings, and once we have it available and can provide the information, we will. All of the meetings will have the opportunity for public comment, both in writing and in person. And we'll be sure to provide that information for the means to be able to provide written comments or to be able to participate by providing comments in person during the meeting as well.
Patrick, I have 3 questions. I'd like the public to go before me, please.
Sure. I'll come back to you, Tammy. So we're going to go to members of the public. Lucian will help you if you need any assistance in unmuting, but first is Vittoria Fariello, then Marianne. I'm sorry, Marianne, I just can't see your last name based on this scroll. Then Todd Fine, then Danny Salerno, excuse me. Vittoria?
Hi, thank you.
Hey.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, and Toby, thanks so much for being here. Just want to give a quick, brief statement, and then I'll get to my questions. As you know, I'm Vittoria Fariello. I'm the district leader down here, and I am a member of the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5 World Trade Center. Our coalition was founded by 9/11 survivors to carry out what our community leader and housing advocate Tom Goodkind started over 20 years ago. He pushed for a building that would be 100% affordable. In fact, Tom was doing this only because he wanted to hold the LMDC to its initial promise that it would build affordable housing in an area that has lost so much. The current proposal for 300 units of affordable housing is in an area that has lost over 6,000 affordable units is nearly offensive. It is essentially a throwaway token to make certain actors feel good while the community suffers and developers make money. If the LMDC can't do better with this plan, then we need to scrap it. And the coalition, as we've been talking about, has commissioned feasibility studies to show that we can build an affordable building at Site 5. So we know that there are options. The LMDC and the ESD are public agencies, which by definition should serve the public, not a bureaucratic imposed timeline or moneyed pressure. This plan is unacceptable. You must postpone.
Do we have a dead screen here?
No, Joe. That's okay. Victoria, go ahead.
Okay, you must postpone any votes on this plan and come back with a plan that addresses the urgent need for
Do we have a dead screen?
community.
Joe, I'm
I'm
sorry,
gonna-
Victoria.
What's wrong with my screen here?
No, Victoria, you're fine.
Sorry.
It might be a Joe issue. Lucian will work with you, Joe. Victoria, sorry about that. Please feel
No
free to
worries.
continue.
No worries. I mean, that is my statement. This is unacceptable. This plan is unacceptable. It must require more affordable housing, not just give us time with an arbitrary deadline. Here are my questions. So the first of all, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the information and for putting together the numbers. I would like to know who put these numbers out, who produced these numbers that you showed us today regarding subsidies for affordability. And if you want to answer that, and then I have one other question.
It'd be helpful for me if you ask all your questions and I can respond accordingly.
Sure. The second question regards the issue of segregation that we have downtown. We have, because of the wealth, we know that we have an issue with segregation. So how does this plan address, or not rather exacerbate, segregation in this area?
Sure. Do you have any other questions, or are there your
That's it.
two questions? Okay. So the first question with regards to the source
Is
of
anyone talking now?
Joe, I can hear you, but I'm going to put you on mute until a little bit later. But we can hear you, and the meeting's still going on. All right, we'll call on you later. Thanks, Joe.
Go ahead, Toby.
Sure.
Sorry.
So the estimated value of the subsidies were provided via an analysis that was carried out by the development team. The numbers have been provided in an analysis form via various public discussion forums. We started this discussion as a part of a public forum that was held by the elected officials, I think December or in this winter of 2021. We've had follow-up discussions with the Affordable Housing Coalition, as well as with local elected officials. These numbers have also been part of the discussions that we've had with the coalition with regards to their feasibility study, as well as meetings with local elected officials. With regards to your second question around segregation, as it relates to the World Trade Center Site 5 project, as I mentioned earlier, there'll be a regulatory agreement that's administered by the state's Affordable Housing Agency, which will ensure that there is distribution of the affordable units throughout the tower. There will be no pour door at the project site. There will be no pour floors. There'll be an opportunity to ensure that the marketing and the application and leasing process for the project follows the required regulations by the state's Affordable Housing Agency. So if there are concerns with regards to how it is that the affordable units will be developed and distributed at the site, please note that it will be subject to the regulatory agreement in perpetuity with the term of the lease for the project site, protecting the permanent affordable units at World Trade Center Site 5.
All right. Thanks, Toby. Todd Fine, then Danny Salerno, and then Ursula Young has also joined in from the public.
What happened? Chat.
We can,
Marianne, you speak now.
Oh, thank you. This is
Marianne, just please introduce yourself, and if you're associated with any groups, just please let us know. Oh, you're muted again.
Marianne, you can unmute now.
Thank you. I'm good. I had to step away a minute and maybe you called on me then. It's Marianne Braverman, for anyone who doesn't know. I absolutely 100% agree with every single word that Jill Goodkind said earlier. And it boggles my mind to think that you would that people should have to make over $100,000 to have affordable housing. I will leave it at that.
I just put
I'm
in
actually
and
a
out,
public
as you
member
know.
of the community board. That's my organization. And that's it. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks,
Not
Marianne.
bye.
Todd Fine, then Danny Salerno, and Todd, though we all know who you are, if you just let us know what group you're with too, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
I think Apple wants to buy a new computer now.
Greetings, yes. I'm still with
Hi, Todd.
the 100% Affordable Coalition. I just think this proposal at this point is utterly sadistic in its presentation. There are no numbers, no assumptions, never details. For years, we've been asking for these financial models, for years now. And this community board has been utterly ineffective. The CAC has been utterly ineffective. This has been run by the Casera lobbyists, have been running this process, producing these presentations. This has all been run
It's
by the
just one
developers
another
who are
frustration.
using these assumptions, these $500 million subsidy claims out of nowhere, out of nothing. No reason why that's we need $500 million. No explanation of what profit results from that. No explanation of how any of that is come to. It's just shameful. It's just utterly shameful. And the 100% Affordable has come up with an expert study by Jared Delane that shows how a real building that can benefit this community can be built. Profit can come from it. Money to the Port Authority can come from it. All this community board needs to do is put its foot down and say what 9/11 survivors wanted 25 years ago in dozens of listening sessions who survived an
Maybe if
attack
we go to
in this
audio and I
community.
make it lower sound.
You have to
Think
stand
that
for
might
what
do it?
these people who suffered 9/11 advocated. And that requires over the next year, finding that money. Do it. Make it happen. Don't let the people who died in that fire, the people who died in 9/11 have a luxury building for Larry Silverstein out of a one bid Cuomo process. We know it's a joke. We know this is going to be shameful for this city forever, and nobody will stand up and do the right thing. New York City is becoming an embarrassment to the world. The city is becoming a tale of two cities. It's an utter joke, and this will forever define it. Thank you.
All right, Todd. Danny Salerno, then Ursula Young.
Danny Salerno. I'm just a non-active member of the community. I'm going to pose my question pretty quickly since obviously I don't want to go over and hijack this meeting. So one of the things I wanted to ask about was just the statistical analysis that was done through the studies or analyses, theoretically speaking, in terms of how gentrification affected property value for the area within the zoning itself. Thank you.
Thanks. Toby, are you able to answer that?
No, I'm not able to speak to that, but I appreciate the comment.
Okay, Ursula.
My name is Ursula Jung, and I just have a comment, no question. We all know we're in the middle of the worst housing crisis we have been in decades. And the community, and thank you to the Coalition for 100% Affordable 5 WTC, has fought for more than 20 years to have affordable housing here. I was one of the people who was down here pre 9/11, saw the neighborhood wiped out, and have seen people coming back in with a fairly different dynamic with this sort of more luxury housing that we have now. And I think that I speak for most people when I say that we would love to have housing which can reflect the real diversity of people who live and work in Lower Manhattan. So our teachers, our nurses, people who help us by working in these jobs that we seem to think don't deserve to live here. So, public keeps getting asked for comments. I'm not exactly sure where these comments go because we don't see them reflected in plans that come out. But that's my comment if it's worth anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Ursula. Comments are always worth something here, whether it feels that way or not. Even small movements do eventually help move the field. We have a call-in user. Lucian, I'm going to ask you to help me out. It's a
Yeah, there's only
606.
one person on the phone who's raised their hand, so I'm just going to go ahead and see if they'll unmute themselves. I think it's either *3 or *6.
Okay.
You're going to press to unmute yourself. Call in
So
user.
you're
There you
identified.
go.
Hi. Let
Am
me
I
just
on the line?
You are. We
Oh,
just need you to
wonderful. I'm
introduce
so sorry
yourself.
I'm late, everyone. This is Victoria Hellstrom at 71 North Moore. I am a member of the Affordable Tower Project, a project that we are all very proud of. We are 7 blocks from Ground Zero, the Pile, and we very much believe that there should be 100% affordable housing on HUD-owned land. We are, I'm sorry, we are quite taken back over this very tawdry deal with Michael Bloomberg, Ron Perlman. I know his wife quite well. We do not feel it is appropriate to build luxury housing, not a single unit on HUD-owned land. And we would like very much for the LMDC to revisit where the $40 billion to rebuild the city. I could give you a litany of the offices and hotels all over Manhattan that were built. However, the very simple fact is that terrorists aimed those planes at our homes. I think everyone will remember George Bush on the Pile saying, "We hear you," and Laura Bush trying to explain to us how we were to explain terrorism to our children. I know that a lot of water has gone under the bridge. It's a complicated matter, and yet we don't feel that this is the way to speak to terrorism in our country. Many residents have been forced out of the area. Many people died. Many of our neighbors, including myself, have cancer because we were told that the air was safe, and it wasn't. Mariana James just lost her mother. This project means something to us. Our first responders, the firemen that are losing their lives 20 years later, that we do not see any acceptable reason that one single luxury unit to be built, absolutely no mixed use. Columbus Circle, Hudson Yards, I am a veteran retailer. I have never seen our malls sitting half vacant. But the simple fact is, many New Yorkers died at this site, and it's very improper to even consider building luxury housing. And we don't really care if we go to Secretary Fudge, if it's President Biden. We do not want LDMC, Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, to be closed. We don't know where that money went. I can tell you that it most certainly did not go toward its residents. And all of those hotels and offices that the real estate industry and the hospitality industry insisted we needed are exactly what is sitting vacant over the pandemic. We feel that this is the way to honor the people that died on 9/11. We feel very, very passionate that we were never heard, that we were never included. And we really absolutely adamantly insist that this building is 100% affordable housing. And if I may be so bold to say, we honestly don't care if Michael Bloomberg pays every penny to make the Port Authority whole. He's a very wealthy man. It would mean nothing to him, but it means something to us. And I really hope that you listen to us and our neighbors. We are the victims of 9/11, and we do not want a luxury skyscraper to go up to pay homage to tourists. And they tried to compromise our freedoms, and it's very important to Lower Manhattan to say this is not who we are. You cannot force us from the area. We want our first responders
Sorry, I'm going
to
to ask
be
you to wrap it up
provided
if you would,
for.
please.
Well, that's really, thank you very much for including me.
Thank you.
I just want to say that we will not stop, and we will go on ABC, NBC, and CBS and share our horror stories over the rebuilding of Lower Manhattan after 9/11, many in which the city would prefer we do not tell. So I thank you very much.
Let's wrap it up.
Thanks, Victoria. I'm going to go, Carol Lamberg, you're next in our public group. And then we do have, Tam, you still have your hand up, and I see Mariama is trying to ask her question. And thank you to everyone who worked through Joe's technical difficulties. Carol Lamberg.
Carol, I'm sending you a request to unmute. You have to follow through on your own.
Hello? No.
Hello? No, not you, Joe.
I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
move you to attendee for now.
Joe.
I'll
Joe's
pass. Carol Lamberg, I've worked in affordable housing for 50 plus years. My boss was Clara Fox, and she said, and I remember this all the time, if government wants to do something, they can find the money. And I think about work I did requiring a congressional amendment, actually, for Manhattan Plaza, when we made performing artist housing 688 units on West 42nd Street, when I was told to people bet their careers that it could never happen, it wouldn't happen. And we were able to get 1,600 units of Section 8. And I guess 50 years later, it's still well occupied and well maintained. I'm a sort of housing geek. And know have learned all the programs that work and don't work. I think that if we got a combination of project-based Section 8 for maybe at least a third of the units, and plus an appropriation for whatever amount of affordable housing we would add to that, we could make a fantastic development. And what a wonderful story for the world if we have affordable housing, a diverse community, and preferences, priorities for first responders and survivors. So anything I can do to help, I'm here. And I joined the Coalition for 100% Affordable, and it's just been their idealism and the method of working. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and now we got to achieve something. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Carol. Appreciate your comments. Tammy, you're still technically next, but I suspect you may want to wait till the end and have Mariama go first, but I defer to you first.
I always think it's important for the chair to have their constituency go. I have a long list of stuff, so I will be patient.
All right, Mariama.
I'm going to be quick because I don't want to. I'm really very, very upset about this. Like, you know, pretty livid about what's happening and the push to move forward in opposition to basically the entire public in terms of the neighborhood and all of our local officials. We're all against them moving forward. So it's really like a slap in the face. But like I said, I don't want to get upset because it's very personal to me too. My mother worked at 130 Liberty Street, where this building is going up. She worked at Deutsche Bank. And as Victoria, you know, put very well, we've lost a lot of people, including her. We deserve this. We've been fighting for it for 20 years, thanks to Tom, and we deserve it. And anybody that watches the news, New Yorkers that have been paying attention to housing and to development, we're aware that there are a number of projects that the Port Authority and the ESD were involved with that are not happening now. Penn Station, that residential tower is not happening. What happened to that $100 million? Why can't we have it? The project at JFK is not happening. Port Authority was involved in that. Why can't we have that money? Again, as Carol just said, if the government wanted to do it, they would do it because they have no trouble seemingly to find money for other projects if it's going to make like developers rich. That's what seems to be the stipulation. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariama. I appreciate your passion on the issue. All right, Tammy, you are up.
I'm back. Like a bad penny, I feel like I keep coming back to Toby. Toby, can you clarify in detail how much the Port Authority has set their land cost for this property?
Land cost wasn't set by the Port Authority. There was a valuation that was done of World Trade Center Site 5, and the value for the site is $249 million.
And when was this value done of 249 million?
The valuation information was submitted as part of the materials that was presented at the start of the public process for the proposed project. So done in 2022. But I can either 2021 or 2022.
It would be appreciated to know exactly when the evaluation for the land was done. All right. 249 million is an awful lot of money. The city transfers land to developers at significantly less money. If the Port Authority was able to transfer the land at a far lower cost, that estimation of 500 million would come down. If you looked at it and said, wow, 249 million, well, if you use that as a zero sum, then there's $249 million to apply for more housing. They don't make developers pony up in the city billions of dollars. So my question is, why are we turning around saying that this land and this has to be with a public benefit corporation and a public agency and authority demanding what the city doesn't of its own land?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Tammy. So as I noted, there was a memorandum of understanding by which the Port Authority gave up a significant portion of land that it owned at the World Trade Center campus to allow for the development of the 9/11 Museum and a memorial, as well as the Performing Arts Center. And in exchange for those parcels that the Port Authority owned, LMDC, in the memorandum of understanding, provided the Port Authority with the financial interest for Site 5. And so the key point of this transaction is making sure that the Port Authority, given that the Port Authority had already given up a significant portion of the campus to allow for the museum, the memorial, as well as the Performing Arts Center to be built, would receive the financial compensation for Site 5. While I understand that the Port Authority is a public authority, the Port Authority doesn't receive a budget allocation either from the state of New York or from the state of New Jersey, and is a self-sustaining entity. So the financial interest from the World Trade Center campus and the financial interest from Site 5 would support the Port Authority's operations as well as its capital projects. And so the terms of this deal aren't as of right as one would consider it for some of the transactions that you may be alluding to. It's instead rooted in this memorandum of understanding by which the port has already given up a significant portion of land to allow for key parts of the World Trade Center campus to be developed. And now it's Site 5, which was permitted to be developed as a commercial site, is now being presented as a mixed-use site to include affordable housing, with the rent payments being made to the Port Authority as a result of that MOU.
Understood. However, the transfer of the land deal, as you're talking about, that built the 9/11 Museum and Memorial, that is chronically underfunded and chronically can barely function as it is. So they rely specifically on donations and are not what one would call a flush thing. So I think we can count that as they had no other option when you have that conversation. What they decided to do for the PAC is a fantastic vanity, absolute thing. But the community asked for and demanded affordable housing. The PAC will be fantastic when it's up and running. No one's denying that is. But we didn't ask for a dollar land deal swap for the PAC. That was a determination done internally. We wanted affordable housing. We wanted continuation of availability. Instead, quite frankly, what we're getting is the most expensive gated community built with public funds on the back of 9/11. It is a gated community. And before you tell me it's not, because there's affordability here, it is primarily and majority luxury housing. 70 to 75% luxury housing with a private gated park attached to it. It'll be no different than Lincoln Center Towers. That is not what the community or the people who rebuilt Lower Manhattan asked for. And I am a little dismayed when you're coming here today for the first public meeting to tell us that you are no longer willing to wait as May 8th, when every of our elected officials is behind waiting until we find more money. This is not one, this is not two, this is not just the community board screaming and the Coalition for Affordable Housing. This is everyone we've put in elected office. That should say something to the Port Authority and to LMDC. I understand that you're in a hurry to wrap up, but I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked at the CAC. There is excess funds that come out of Battery Park City. With the last MOU for the buckets, the money that went to the city is supposed to be tagged for affordable housing. When I asked you this question last week, the answer was we never heard back. Have you followed up and heard back whether or not the city, the comptroller, or whomever, and I'd like to know whom you're speaking with, denied the opportunity?
Sure. Are you asking a series of questions, or how would you like to?
Oh yeah, hit them any way that you want.
Sure, I'll
but-
let you have the floor, and then I can address your
No,
question.
I mean, hit them any way you want. I mean, the first obviously was a statement. You're telling me that the Port Authority cannot give the land away because they've already given away the 9/11 Museum. They've already given away the PAC. So therefore, they're looking to bank all of the money that they, quote unquote, gave away on this property. And yet it's a gated community. The gates go up every night at 8 o'clock. So, I mean, you're telling me that the Port Authority has said they will not take a penny less than 249 million, and nothing less out of that 249 million can go towards affordable housing, correct?
The terms of the deal are as presented.
Which have not changed in terms of the money that goes to Port Authority since it was first presented, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then let's talk about the Battery Park City Authority excess funds.
The city has not provided for the Battery Park City Authority funds as a means of increasing affordability at the project.
And who are you speaking to at the city, and who has not responded?
We're speaking to city leadership. I don't have the exact names in front of me at this time, but we're engaged with city leadership to understand how it is that the Battery Park City funds could be directed towards the project, and the city has not provided the funds for increasing affordability at the project.
So the Joint Settlement Fund is supposed to provide for affordability. And that was signed off on by the governor, the comptroller, and the mayor when that original deal was done some time ago. There is hundreds of millions of dollars that come out of Battery Park City Authority that goes to the city. And my question is, has ESD in specific and LMDC been in touch with the city comptroller and the mayor's office and the governor's? Those are the three decision makers. And if so, when?
I'll have to just flag that and follow up with you on that, Tammy. I feel like you're asking your questions and you've made your statements known, and I'll have to follow up on that.
Well, I asked the same question last week, so I'm not certain, it wasn't as if I was going to let it go. I certainly would rather in a public forum find that information, because then my
Sure,
next
and
question.
I don't have a more detailed answer for you other than the city has not made the funds available. So we'll continue that discussion and follow up accordingly.
So then the next question becomes, without that I dotted or T crossed, and without anything in writing from the mayor, the comptroller's office or any BPCA, anything, why can't the board meetings be pushed off until at least this source of money, which seems that it's right there, you have a definitive answer on?
To date, there's been no affirmative answer provided on allowing for the funds to be utilized towards increasing the project. And the approvals that we're seeking would provide for increasing the affordability at the project, as well as allowing for at least a year for continued discussions around increasing the affordability at the project by identifying a subsidy source. So at this time, ESD isn't delaying the approvals presentation to the board of directors until we hear back on it.
So if you can wait until April 2024 to change the deal, to provide for additional funding to get more affordability, because the original base deal has not changed. The Port Authority is not giving up any money. The developer is not giving up money. The only thing that has changed is how you calculate the affordable housing, correct? You have done the differences in the AMI, stretching those numbers to be able to provide to 30. But the base root of the deal that was presented originally and is the same. And there's no additional funds either from the developer or from the Port Authority, correct?
That's correct. There's been no additional public subsidy that have been identified either by the federal, state, or city elected officials for this project.
Well, I appreciate the pushback on the elected officials, but much the
And
same.
I don't mean I don't want that statement to be mistaken. It's just ESD and the public sponsors have been engaged in this discussion with the stakeholders for the last 2.5 years. So one can say the state and the city, it's not just on the elected officials, have not identified a public subsidy source for the project. I'm not trying to be dismissive of your point.
No, but it is being dismissed that the fact that there is a pot of money from the Joint Settlement Fund that we know of, that the public has talked about, not only on Community Board 1, but the Coalition for Affordability, our elected officials, and we are asking that this not go before a vote until the potential to get that worked out to increase that number over 30 happens. And yeah, we need the Port Authority to come forward and say, give up some. And the developer, there's been absolutely no movement on anything except the public knocking their heads. And I am apologizing to you for sounding rude about this, but we're the public servants, the unpaid public servants. It's the role of ESD to find those things to make this work. You are the project planning partner in this. It should be ESD who does the work on this. It is frightening to me that I can be told, well, we haven't heard back from the city, so we're just going forward. Any developer who's going to buy a piece of land has to have all his ducks in a row first and have all the answers. So why aren't we waiting till we have all the answers before making this major move? And why is it May 8th when you're coming to us without an ability, even if we do a resolution this evening, you will deny the community board the due diligence of its business cycle by meeting and pushing this project forward in the month of May. We will do a draft resolution potentially, but we will not have a firm thing until after our board meeting at the end of the month. And all we heard thus far was we are working on it. We won't go to the board meetings until we have all the answers that we need. You still don't have all the answers. You haven't heard and gone through everything yet. And yet you're pushing forward. So is there a potential that all of this can be pushed to June, even though we would prefer, much like your slide said, April 2024 and every avenue for funding being we talked about the Joint Settlement Fund. That's a no. Here's who said no to us. We've talked to the Port Authority. The Port Authority has come back and said they're not willing to change the deal. We've talked to the developers. They have no desire to take another 30 million off and move it there. That's what the community needs to see and understand. And I think that's what we've been asking for. since these discussions started. And I'm dismayed that here we are on May 8th and we still don't have it. And it's almost as if I would wonder if ESD focused on the other projects it was working on to finish those when they launched first and did not focus on this, did not try and source the funding as much as the community is trying. And that's not directed at you personally, that's directed at the organization.
That would be good.
Toby, do you have a response that you want to?
No, I thank the chair for her comments.
Okay. Tammy, shall I move on?
I'll just sit here stewing. I'm good.
All right. Mariama, I want to give you the last question or comment, and then we'll move on to a committee discussion about how we want to grapple with this.
Thank you, Patrick. I just wanted to note on the record that a large number of members of the 9/11 community, so that would be the survivors and the responders, also have concerns about the land transfer to the PAC and the memorial, because there's a worry that 20 years from now, when people say, oh, 9/11's been forgotten, that land can be used by the nonprofits for something else, and it's not necessarily permanent. So we don't know that for sure, but there's been inquiries that have not been responded to. So there are a number of members of the 9/11 community very much concerned about the transfer. We don't see it as anybody, gifting us anything or doing us a favor by having created those two entities.
Thank you for that comment, Mariama. But I just want to flag that there's restrictions on the use that's permitted for the museum, memorial, and performing arts center sites. And so if there are concerns about that, please know that there are restrictions in place to prevent the changes in use.
Deed restrictions, you mean? And they're permanent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mariama. I guess Tammy and Lucian, I want to see if we can draw this into some committee work to start, and members of the committee to see what we want to do with this. My sense would be that there is a resolution that we would like to do tonight. And so I want to sort of get a sense from everybody that that's where you want to head. Again, members of the LZE committee, I know there's many other members, full board and public members of Community Board 1 who are with us tonight. But focusing just on the LZE committee members of how we want to sort of handle this and move it forward. So no need to raise your hand, at least at this point. If you're an LZE committee member, feel free to chime in. If you want to say, hey, let's do a resolution and we get a second, then let's start working on it.
Well, it seems like we should do a resolution.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that's the sense of the committee.
I mean, what do other people think?
Not on this committee, but I agree.
Yeah, I'm not on the committee either, but I agree.
Right.
I'm on the committee. I definitely agree.
Okay, there we go. That's
Yeah,
enough to get it. That's enough.
I'm on the committee and I agree.
There we go. That's enough to get us started.
I'm on the committee and I agree.
Okay, so
Lucian, do you have, we're thinking about some factual whereases beforehand, anticipating that this might be something that the committee wants to opine on in a resolution. I don't know, Lucian, are we at a point where we can pull that up, or how does it look?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up a couple individuals had begun drafting a resolution, so I will.
And Richard, I know you're close to this issue, so I might call on you to sort of, if you can, sort of succinctly summarize the whereas, I'm sorry, the therefore be it resolved portions, which is what are we asking for out of our resolution? What are we seeking the resolution to say ultimately.
Well, I need to
And
take
Tammy
a
too, feel
good,
free to pop in.
yeah, I need to take a look at them because I was not involved in the drafting, but I certainly have an idea of what we want to accomplish.
So, Richard, I'm gonna pop in and say, let's back up with where we want to accomplish, and then work on our whereases. I mean, from my purpose, from where I stand as chair, I don't think that they should move forward to send this to any board until all of our elected officials and we work on more money, because the Port Authority has given nothing, the developer has given nothing, and they haven't finished the opportunities of seeking additional funds. Just because they didn't hear back doesn't mean that it's a closed door. And how those doors could be open is, and even if it was only 45 days, allowing the board to do the business of the board, which puts us to the end of June, is important. But giving us the time, now that the governor has passed the governor's budget and everything else, to be able to work with the electeds and see what's happening with the BPCA Joint Settlement Fund, to me would be all good asks. And I'm shutting up from here.
Okay, that's helpful.
Tammy, yes, I totally agree with that. Fundamentally, it's delay this, it's postpone or postpone the approval votes and work in collaboration with the elected officials and the community. I think goodness. Can you still hear me? Because
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just lost the video here. Work in collaboration with the community to explore all the various funding options. I'm just kind of summarizing, I think, a little bit what Tammy said. But I would also add that we want a review with and the details of the financial models that they've been using to represent the kinds of subsidies that they're saying are required. I can tell you that they presented information last year that was similar to this, not exactly the same, but information that looked like it had the calculations that you could develop and test and develop and use for other assumptions. But all of those assumptions weren't there. And you could not use whatever was presented to really determine other options for either affordability or percentages or what have you. So we need more and better information about how the models work and an ability to use them.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. So I've got really three meaty, therefore be it resolved action points for the resolution at this point. Other members of the LZE committee? Justine, I see your hand is up. If you want to make a quick comment, I'll recognize you, but I want you to understand that we have to limit the voting and the input on the resolution, at least at this point, to the committee.
Sure. No, I'll be quick, and it's a suggestion, and then you guys talk about it. But the suggestion
Thanks.
would be, therefore be it resolved that the LMDC, the Port Authority, whomever, actually put some pen to paper and pick up the phone and try to help find the sources of funding, because they made it clear they've done nothing, or at least it seems like it. So asking them to get involved and actually help us find the sources of funding. And that's my suggestion. Thank you so much, Patrick. I know I'm not part of the committee, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that we were talking about collaborating with them, which puts an active responsibility on them, as well as our elected officials and as much as we can help in the community.
Yeah, so we're collaboratively including actively seeking out the additional sources of potential funding for the claimed necessary subsidies. We'll put those together. Laura?
Thank you.
Just as long as we're talking about transparency of the numbers, you know, if the idea is that the pressure is on this building to make up for the fact that there is now a cultural institution and the fountain, the memorial and things in the actual super block that was the World Trade Center site, I mean, is there a way, like, are we saying that the commercial developments on that site are not making money, that the, you know, occupied Freedom Tower is not lucrative with all the publishing people and all the people in there and all the occupants of like 4 and 2 World Trade Center? I mean, those buildings seem like they're much better occupied than the 2 towers were. From my understanding, the towers weren't making money at all and they had crappy retail in the basement, and now you've got, you know, the Stegosaurus with like miles of shops and everything. So I'm just curious about, you know, what is the financial need really of, like, what is the gap between what was there before 9/11 in terms of the revenue from that site versus what is there now with and without this tower? I mean, that's on top of all the arguments people have given for why there should be affordable housing there. And then my one other quick comment is, where we say agencies in the resolution, it should be AGENCY''S. Little typo. So, okay, that's it for me.
Great. I think we can dig into the numbers a little bit. I suspect we might hear an answer on your first point that, you know, this site wasn't originally part of the Silverstein leased World Trade Center parcels, I guess, at that point in time in 2001, since it was owned by Deutsche Bank. But I you know, I don't know the full details of all that, how it all mixes together. But to the extent that the revenues of the rest of the World Trade Center campus have an effect to prop up the viability of that land, which I think the point you're getting at, then that's important, and we should ask for that within the numbers as well. Okay, so everyone hopefully on the committee has had a chance to sort of see the whereases as they're currently drafted. Typically on our committee, they're all historical. They're references to really what the situation is, what the community board has opined before, what the community has been looking for. And I think that's what we saw reflected in what Lucian put on the screen. So unless anybody has very specific whereas language that you want to have included, Tammy, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of went like this. I would like to have a whereas on there and we can wordsmith it. But basically, my understanding from every explanation that we get back based on the MOU is that the Port Authority made a bad investment, right? They have the PATH station, they had, you know, these very expensive architects who, just no offense intended to the architects who I love in our community board, you know that. But are we paying for the mistake on 5 World Trade Center and having to lose the opportunity for affordable housing for mistakes in land deals and financial miscalculations that they made for the PAC and the 9/11 Museum and Memorial? And if that's the case, I think that should be in the whereas that says the community does not want to pay for that. The community has helped rebuild. It is time for them to do the community benefit to ensure that there is multi-dimensional income restricted housing in the majority of that building. I mean, we can still say 100%, but and to that end, Port Authority needs to take a look at the deal.
Good point. Tammy, you said based on the memorandum of understanding that you think that there were let's say financial overruns on prior World Trade Center projects. That's what Toby said. I missed it. I'm sorry.
Toby said there's an MOU.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think my presentation is being grossly misrepresented. There's a memorandum of understanding between LMDC and the Port Authority by which the Port Authority gave up property that it owned on the World Trade Center campus to allow for the development of the 9/11 Museum Memorial as well as the Performing Arts Center in exchange for Site 5.
Correct. And how much?
That's it. That's the end.
Understood, but in that MOU, Toby, it was $1, wasn't it? They gave up the land, correct?
Yes,
What was the amount that they gave up those parcels at?
Are you talking about the value of the parcels or are you talking about the
Mhm.
transaction amount? I don't have the estimated value for the museum, memorial, and the performing arts sites, and one can argue that there's different values for that, given that they were being built within the footprints of the 9/11, the Twin Towers. But the lease amount is, as you've stated, a nominal amount for the delivery of the development of the museum, memorial, and the Performing Arts Center.
Could you confirm, I believe you have said it in a public meeting before, that they gave the land up for $1? Is that true?
Either $1 or a nominal amount, yes.
Okay, so we can put $1 nominal amount. But, again, Patrick, when we talk about, there's that, and then there's the money that it costs to design the path and the Oculus, which was
Right. I just wanted us to be really clear where that information is coming from. It's obvious and well known that there have been cost overruns at other projects at the World Trade Center site, and drawing a dotted line to the conclusion that perhaps the community is having to sacrifice affordability to effectively subsidize those mistakes is a fair point for us to make in our resolution. And whereas I just wanted to make sure I understood that the source of that was not the memorandum of understanding that Toby referenced, but just that this has happened and that that's a logical conclusion that one might draw.
It happened as it was effectively done through a memo of understanding between LMDC and the Port Authority when they gave up the property.
Okay.
So yeah, and then separately there are huge cost overruns for the parts that they did retain in the path station with the Oculus.
May I just say it's something to the extent of $4 billion, like $3 billion over?
Sure. And that's, that's documented. We can pull that information.
Yes.
Okay. Any other specific language that folks want in the whereas clauses? If not, I'm recognizing that we're well beyond 90 minutes on this one topic alone. Again, not minimizing the importance of it, but just want to recognize that we've got a lot more to do tonight. And so if there are no other specifics, please shout out now. If so, otherwise I'm going to call the question.
I'm shouting out, Patrick. I'm
Okay.
shouting out. So where we talked about the LMDC or ESD working collaboratively with us, I'd like to cite potential sources of funding. So potential sources of fundings that could include but not be limited to, and I can list out a number of them, so we can identify at least some of the source, some of the direction we want to go.
Okay.
To find these funds, and I can give you a list, or we can talk about it here. I can sit in chat or whatever you want.
Well, it as long as the committee's comfortable that you're well aware of what those potential sources might be, we can get that list from you afterward, and we can work that into the language. Okay. And quite honestly, Richard, I'll just copy you on the sort of the drafting as it goes around before we get to the final wording. All right. The sense of the committee will be there. Okay. Anybody else? Hearing none, let's call the question. Can I get a second?
Second.
I second.
Great.
Yeah, a committee member, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Richard and Laura. Okay. We can do this vote by affirmation if you will be considered to be a yes on the resolution, unless you respond now when I call for anybody who's a no.
Cameras on, please.
I'll give you a moment to get your cameras on. Again, voting by affirmation. If anyone, however, is a no, now's your chance. Any no's? Any abstentions? Any recusals? Hearing none, unanimously passes the LZE committee. Okay. Thank you, Toby. Thanks for hanging in there. And thank you to everybody who's come out both in the public and other members of the community board who aren't with our committee, but wanted to speak on the important issue. We appreciate your time. All right, we're going to move on to the second item on our agenda, which is, pull it up, a citywide zoning text amendment. We're going to have a presentation from the Department of City Planning. This is something we had previously been previewed for the committee before as part of the mayor's City of Yes initiative. This is the carbon neutrality text amendment, which will involve several actions, and I believe, though correct me if I'm wrong, is one of several text amendments that will be necessary to complete the whole program. And we're hearing action 1 of 3, which we were told would be taking place around now. So right on time are our friends at the Department of City Planning. And is it Stephen who's going to present?
Yes. Hi, how you doing, Patrick?
Good, Stephen. How are you?
I'm
Welcome.
good. A little bit sleepy, but I'm still awake. Okay, so I'm just going to launch in. So Lucian, you're going to handle the going from slide to slide?
Yes, sir. I could drive for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me present this project from the Department of City Planning. There's about 17 slides.
Stephen, I'm sorry, just for the benefit of the members of the committee who might not remember you or who may be a little newer to the process, if you just let everybody know who you are. Thanks.
Sure. I'm Stephen Johnson. I'm a senior planner in the Manhattan office of City Planning. And I've been there for almost 10 years now. And we have regular meetings with the executive committee of Community Board 1. And frankly, Patrick and Tammy, we need to schedule a new one. Also, the good news is that we have a new planner coming on board in about a month. So we'll have a new CB1 planner who will be bringing you these types of presentations in the future. So just to start off, I wanted to mention that there's 3 particular bits of information that I wanted to relay about carbon neutrality. First is that the project was referred out on April 24th. And if you go to the city planning website, there's 3 different things that you can click on to get a ton of information. The first is that if you click on City of Yes, it'll extend you to the carbon neutrality webpage, and it has a whole bunch of information on the project. The second one is if you go to the zoning application portal that's on our website, this project is up and it has the referred document, including the zoning text, the project description, and all the important dates. And then the third thing I wanted to mention, as at the April 24th review session, the lead manager, project manager for the project gave an hour-long presentation on the project to the commission and did a Q&A for 1 hour. So it's a massive project, a lot of detailed questions. And what I'm bringing you here today is not 2 hours, but 17 slides in a bridge version. And what I'd like to do is at the end of it, if any questions that I can't answer, I can take them back to the people who are managing the project, because this is a citywide text amendment. It goes to all 59 community boards. And I'll get clarification on those questions and get back to you as soon as possible. So please go to the next slide. Thank you. So carbon neutrality is the first of 3 projects that the Department of City Planning is developing as part of Mayor Adams' broader City of Yes initiative. So it's charging agencies to take a look at outdated regulations, holding New Yorkers back from investing in their homes and their businesses and in the city overall. So the 2 other initiatives, which are up on the screen there, are economic opportunity and housing opportunity. Those will begin more public engagement later this summer. They are distinct and independent proposals from this proposal. And in order to avoid inundating you all with massive proposals on top of each other, we're trying to step them out in a process. Now, the department has been researching sustainability related issues for several years, since Zone Green in 2012. And that is kind of the foundation for this proposal. And additionally, many of the elements of this proposal are urgently needed, delivering zoning relief to home and building owners who are trying to undertake smart retrofit projects to cut energy costs and to help the environment, but are prevented from doing so by the zoning regs. So finally, carbon neutrality isn't the end goal of sustainability for us, but sustainability practices are embedded into our planning work and will continue to be present in our work moving forward in different projects, including these two projects coming up, economic opportunity and housing opportunity. Next slide, please. So first, I want to take a minute to frame the presentation, why we are talking about carbon in the first place. So it's important to emphasize we are facing a climate emergency, and it is largely fueled by global carbon dioxide emissions. So carbon dioxide makes up the vast majority of the United States greenhouse gas emissions, 80% of it in 2019. And carbon dioxide generally comes from human activity, specifically the combustion of fossil fuels like diesel and gasoline, natural gas, and home heating oil. In 2016, the world community joined together to sign the Paris Agreement, which was a vision to curtail human greenhouse gas emissions in order to limit overall global warming to 2 degrees Celsius and thus prevent further environmental damage associated with climate change. So here in New York City, we've been implementing this vision through a number of initiatives under the umbrella of achieving carbon neutrality by reducing the city's emission by 80% by 2050, or what we call 80 by 50 for short. So the city's emission to be reduced by 80% by 2050, or 80 by 50 for short. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by a carbon neutral city? So it's a city in which we are focused on reducing operational carbon emissions in line with the goals of the Paris Agreements. So it's a city where we've reduced our overall energy needs. And to do this, we'll need to retrofit almost every building in the city to become highly efficient in order to reduce wasted energy. It's a city where we've cleaned the grid. And to do this, we'll need to switch from the fossil fuel powered electricity to renewables like solar and wind. And it's a city where we've electrified all the remaining energy needs. That includes our vehicles and our buildings as well. This means moving away from the fossil fuel fired furnaces and boilers to newer electrically powered technologies for heating and cooling, namely heat pumps. And as you can see from this chart, the key driver of our city's carbon emissions by far is the building sector. Of course, there's a relationship between the buildings, what gets built, and the zoning laws that govern them. So that's what we're doing here with DCP today. Next slide, please. So when it comes to our research, we are building on the strong foundation that you see on the screen here. 10 years ago, the department issued Zone Green, the first comprehensive overhaul of our zoning to support emerging green technologies like rooftop wind and solar. It was DCP's first step into the issue. In some ways, you can think of our research now as a follow-up to Zone Green. So it's a chance to revisit after 10 years, to update it and to adjust in light of many of the new technologies and legal changes since then. And we found that, as we all know, technology changes really fast, zoning doesn't. So we are trying to update them as much as possible. So this includes the focus on decarbonization from the Paris Agreement and 80/50. So this includes feedback from architects, engineers, and advocates about issues they've identified and ideas for improvements, as exemplified in the report on the slide here from the Urban Green Council called Zone Greener. This also includes updating the zoning to reflect the Climate Mobilization Act at the city level, which especially known as Local Law 97, which will impose strict fines on large buildings which do not reduce their carbon emissions, as well as the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act at the state level, which has a particular set of solar and energy storage goals for the city. Next slide, please. So development of this proposal began in March when Mayor Adams announced his vision for a city of yes. And since then, we've conducted extensive outreach, and in particular with practitioners and other subject matter experts to help us ensure this proposal will be helpful to those who are trying to add solar, EV chargers, or heat pumps in their homes and businesses. Now, the Department of City Planning is sometimes criticized for not sharing enough information about what we're working on until it's in the public review process. But to make good on our promise to do better, we have held 4 open to the public info sessions on this research. We had 2 in October of last year and 2 in March of this year, to which our chair, Dan Garodnick, invited all community board chairs and encouraged them to share the information for these events with their boards. And I'd also like to mention that we had a particular presentation to Community Board 1 in December with previous planners, Jasmine Topali and Ariel Bai. And I hope that was helpful for everybody here that was able to attend that. So also in March, we partnered with the Urban Green Council, which is a recognized leader in climate work in New York City, to convene a group of tech and policy experts to review an initial draft of the proposal to validate the climate goals we're trying to support. Next slide, please. So along the way, we go to slide 7, please. Thank you. So along the way, we've been asking this experts, nonprofit leaders, and advocates, what do you need to do to help achieve our climate goals? How has zoning helped or hurt? So meeting the challenge of our climate crisis is a massive undertaking. And through our engagement over the past year, we've identified a number of ways that zoning can help support this effort. So I'd like to review the 4 key goals of the proposal that seeks to support this, and will, as well as 17 specific zoning changes we've identified. So next slide, please. So the first goal is supporting the decarbonization of our city's energy grid. So illustrated on this slide are initiatives already underway at the state or city level. These are not part of our zoning proposal. They are in the context in which our planning work is situated. So by 2040, the New York State is legally required to achieve a 100% renewably based energy grid. And to support this, we'll be developing large amounts of offshore wind and bringing in more clean hydroelectric power from upstate and from Canada. However, this transition will need a kind of all hands on deck approach. This includes putting all of our rooftops to work generating energy across the city. So to give you a sense of where we stand with rooftop solar, in 2016, we set a goal of getting to 1,000 megawatts of rooftop solar across the city by 2030. To date, we are currently at around 300 to 400 megawatts. This means we have 7 years to more than double the amount of solar in New York City in order to meet that goal. So to utilize the energy from offshore wind and from rooftop solar, our energy grid will have to become smarter and more decentralized, with resources spread throughout the city instead of limited to utility sites in outlying areas. And to support this smarter, more decentralized grid, we will need to rely on energy storage, which is essentially large batteries, which will act as kind of the glue holding the grid together. Next slide, please. So to support the ongoing work of cleaning the grid, and New York City zoning can help in 5 key areas. So first, we can take a fresh look at our rooftop zoning allowance to ensure that there aren't any limitations holding us back from our solar goals. In many districts, for example, there are current limits on the amount of rooftop that can be covered by the solar canopy. So this proposal will update those rules to ensure a roof can be completely covered by solar. Second, we need to take a similar approach for our city's 8,000 plus acres of open parking areas, ensuring that zoning is updated to allow solar canopies over parking lots. Third, if you want to generate clean energy for utility customers, through the CURE program, zoning considers that a commercial use. But we need to recognize that these are residential, there are large residential campuses, hospitals, schools, and colleges in residential districts where community solar would be a great fit, and zoning, of course, then needs to be updated to permit this use. So fourth, we will need to ensure that safe FDNY and DOB reviewed storage facilities are located where they are needed most. Energy storage is currently not allowed in residential districts where customers need access to clean and renewable energy. Zoning needs to be updated to add specific rules for energy storage and help facilitate this throughout the city. And finally, onshore wind faces strict limits in today's zoning without a quote relief valve for sites where greater heights may be appropriate. So the zoning proposal will create a new tool that can be used by future applicants to submit onshore wind facilities for a public review process with the City Planning Commission. And to be clear on this last issue, this proposal does not change current height restrictions on wind turbines. So I know a lot of community districts take issue with building heights and heights of I guess we would call potential wind turbines, but this does not change those current height restrictions. Next slide, please. So the second goal we're seeking is to support relates to eliminating fossil fuels from our city's million-plus existing buildings, almost all of which will be around in 2050 when we need to have achieved these carbon neutrality goals. So these buildings are by far our biggest source of carbon dioxide emissions. And to improve, we'll need to retrofit virtually every single building to retire oil and gas powered furnaces and boilers and replace them with new, highly efficient electric systems and improve the efficiency of exterior walls, windows, and roofs to keep the heat in and the cool inside. So it's important to note two laws adopted by City Council in 2019 and 2021. These are both crucial here. So for large buildings, which are defined as buildings 25,000 square feet and larger, Local Law 97 will begin to impose fines on these buildings if they do not cut their carbon emissions. Fines will begin in 2024 and will increase through 2050. Second, Local Law 154 requires that all newly constructed buildings are electrified from the start, so fossil fuel-based equipment will no longer be allowed in new construction. Next slide, please. So within this context, zoning can help support the decarbonization of buildings in these three key ways. First, zoning can accommodate the increasing need for outdoor equipment such as heat pumps, which cannot be located in building basements or cellars, to be located above the zoning height limit on top of buildings, on the building rooftops. So by getting zoning out of the way, we'll give homeowners and architects and engineers greater flexibility to navigate their best path to electrification. Second, zoning needs to ensure that that where someone is trying to add thicker insulation, or even in some cases for large buildings to reclad the building by removing the old facade and replacing it with a new, more efficient one, that they don't run into zoning obstacles that prevent them from undertaking the project. And thirdly, we need to update an existing incentive, the 2012 Zone Green Wall Thickness deduction, which awards a small amount of additional floor area for better than code buildings. We need to update that to reflect the latest energy code and best practices for the future. So finally, there's the issue of costs. So undertaking all this is not free, but there are billions of dollars at the federal, state, and city level available to support it. So there's a program called the New York City Accelerator Program, which is run out of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. They can help connect with technical and financial support, and that you can just go to their website. If you go to your search engine and put in NYC Accelerator, it'll take you right there, and it has a load of information. Next slide, please. So the third goal zoning is seeking is to support is decarbonizing the private vehicles that New Yorkers drive and own. So there are currently 2 million private vehicles registered in New York City, and a tiny fraction, less than 1% that is, are zero emission. So to help owners make the switch to electric, federal, state, and initiatives are underway, but one key issue zoning touches on is where you can park and charge your electric vehicle. And addressing this need will be key to helping New Yorkers make the switch to electric vehicles. So by 2035, New York State in Albany has indicated that all new vehicles sold in the state will need to be zero emission. This will be a long-term transition, but we know that the future is electric and more vehicles will be electric, and we'll need places to charge vehicles because they're lacking places to charge. Finally, we also recognize that the future isn't simply focused on vehicles, but there needs to be more trips taken by bicycle, scooter, or on foot, or by public transit. The better for the health of our environment and the city. Next slide, please. So within this context, zoning can help support this goal with 5 key changes. First, allow commercial charging facilities in all commercial and manufacturing districts. They are currently prohibited in about half the city's commercial districts. Second, allow building owners to designate a portion of their existing parking spaces to be offered up as a public EV charging sharing spaces. The same rules that currently apply today for car sharing vehicles in existing public garages or lots would apply here. So third, allow for more flexible use of public parking lots, public parking garages, and commercial accessory parking facilities by allowing car rental, car share, commercial vehicle storage, and public EV charging within these facilities too. Fourth, expand special rules that apply only in Manhattan that allow for indoor automated parking facilities to be available to everyone citywide. And fifth, update our parking rules to acknowledge the need of public bicycle parking and allow bike parking facilities in commercial districts. Next slide, please. So finally, our last goal relates to reducing our city's stormwater and solid waste and helping eliminate the carbon emissions associated with both of these waste streams. So first, we can reduce stormwater runoff by promoting greater permeability on site. This means less water flowing to energy-intensive treatment plants and facilities. Second, we can reduce the energy associated with hauling and processing garbage by reducing the amount of garbage. Up to 45% of our waste stream is organic material that doesn't need to go to landfill and can be reused within the city. And third, we can reduce the carbon emissions associated with our food by promoting more local food production on our city's rooftops. Next slide, please. So again, within this context, the zoning can help contribute to a better environment in these 4 key ways. First, clarify zoning, quote, paving rules to ensure that permeable paving, which allows water to infiltrate the soil right where it falls, is always allowed. Second, update our zoning street tree requirement to allow for new high-performance tree bed types, such as connected tree beds and rain gardens. Third, our zoning resolution doesn't even mention the words compost or recycling, so it's time to add specific rules clarifying where these uses are permitted, allowed to help these sectors grow. And finally, rooftop greenhouses are allowed on top of non-residential buildings, but to build one, current rules require you to obtain a cert from the chair of the City Planning Commission. So by streamlining this requirement and cutting costs and simplifying the process for those looking to grow food on their community rooftops will help encourage that rooftop greenhouses. Next slide, please. So that concludes the 17 goals, specific zoning changes we've identified to help support the larger project of decarbonizing the city and keeping it clean, healthy, and equitable for years to come. And you can see the 17 on the screen here. Next slide, please. So as a citywide zoning text amendment, this process will continue for the next several months, including 2 months with the community boards. So all 59 community boards will be concurrently reviewing this proposal and then their borough boards and borough presidents will also review. In July, the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the proposed changes. And in August, taking into account all they've heard during the review process, the commission will vote on approving or modifying the proposal and will then pass it on to City Council, where the council will have 50 days to ultimately adopt the zoning changes or modify them and make them into law. So that concludes my presentation. And like I said, I'm happy to take any questions that I'm not able to answer. I will take back to our project managers and turn those around really quickly and get those answers to you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Stephen. So let's start with the end first, well, the end of your presentation first, if we may. And we're going to go through committee member questions and then any public questions as well. Just backing up. You said, I believe this was referred out on the 24th of April by the Department of City Planning, is that, or by the City Planning Commission, is that right?
That's right, and the clock started May 3rd, so the window is from May 3rd to July 3rd, so you're right at the very, very beginning of the process.
Okay, so that gives us through our, I'm just being practical here, through our June full board meeting, folks, to adopt the resolutions. So unless there is a groundswell of reason to do so tonight, I will tell you from my own position, this is a lot of information. And while we've had a preview on this before, there are a number of actions in here. And frankly, there are some areas that are, I guess, a little bit more concerning, particularly as it touches on the fines and the local law 97 issues, which is very touchy and rightfully so. So I don't want folks to feel like we have to rush into a resolution tonight. I think folks would be right to say, I want to think about it, I want to ask some more questions, etc. So with that little proviso and speech at the top, I'm going to go ahead and recognize first Rosa, then Gerald, and then Lucian. I see you'd like to ask a question as well.
Yeah, just one thing to highlight before discussion begins. But Stephen, will someone be coming? Are you planning on sending people out for the second round of these, just in case there's follow-up questions that need to be answered?
If we need to.
Okay.
My goal is, if I can't answer your questions and the ones that I then send to you and get answered are not enough, I can come back and get more questions, or if there are certain concerns. And of course, you have my phone number and my email. You can ask me at any time too.
Yeah, I think that's an important question, Lucian. Thank you. Which is, Stephen, that if and I didn't mean to direct the committee one way or another, but if we're unable to reach a resolution tonight because folks need more information, have a lot of questions, and want to think about it a little bit more, if there's somebody from DCP who can come back at the next meeting. And so it sounds like you're saying yes, and thank you for that commitment. All right. So Rosa, then Gerald, then Richard Corman, then Alice and Tammy. I do recognize your hands up, but I know you like to go at the end. So we'll go in that order for now.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and thank you very much, Stephen, for coming to present to us. This is all stuff that I am very much pro and supportive of, and so thank you for finally doing it. In our building, I know that composting, which you mentioned, is a huge deal. And when we were composting, we actually had bins on every floor of our building so that we could collect it ourselves and then put it into the city bins to put out. We have been trying to get back onto composting, and so far have not been met with much enthusiasm from the Department of Sanitation, even though we have over 400 units in our building to be able to collect, compost at one single point. So given that hurdle, just even from my own experience, I question how this is actually going to be implemented, given how difficult it already is when we are willing to bend over backwards to try to make it happen. So that's number one. Number two is we also looked at installing photovoltaics on our roof for the building, and I believe it was incredibly cost prohibitive. I know that our building had an A, and then I guess we had a B most recently. I'm curious because I know that I passed by a gazillion buildings with Ds. So how anybody who owns their building or owns in their building, their first question is going to be, how are we going to deal with the cost issue? And I think without any specificity on that, you're going to get a lot of people incredibly concerned. And so I would ask for you to dive deeply into the specificities of how we are actually going to be able to afford this. I know that as buildings, local law 11, for instance, which is a building-wide project, tends to run very expensive for us. And this sounds like, frankly, it would be on a scale beyond that. And I would imagine that that's going to be incredibly problematic on a citywide level. without a real plan, a concrete plan in place to do that. And then the last point I just wanted to bring up is, I mean, we're always arguing about the role of our streets and the parking spaces in our streets all around us, especially in FIDI, which is where I am. But I wonder if it's possible to park and charge at the same time. And so you pay a fee for the parking spot that also happens to be able to charge your car, and then you have to leave. And that would be a way to sort of decentralize a location of parking and actually make it useful and maybe even income generating for the city. I don't know, profit generating, which we always seem to need more money for the city. So that's it for me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So just on the last issue, so the zoning, the idea is that it's going to make it easier to be able to charge on private lots or parking lots that are like at a supermarket or, you know, just public lots where you can go drive to. We don't cover anything related to the streets, which is the purview of the Department of Transportation, but DOT is in discussions with the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice to expand access to public EV charging on city streets in all the boroughs. So I know that, you know, they're trying to get that going and get that more available across the city. So they are having discussions on that.
I wish you success on that. And how about, so how are we paying for all of these major significant changes to our city?
Well, there are some funding streams available. If you go to New York's NYC Accelerator, there's some pathways that they outline. I'm not sure if there's other pots where you can get money for. I know I have friends who like 5-10 years ago put solar on their roofs because they were more heavily subsidized back then. And I'm not sure what the system is now for subsidizing those, but I'll look into that for you.
Rosa, I'm cutting in really quick. I know that NYSERDA should be putting the finishing touches on its Inflation Reduction Act monies. That's something that we know there's going to be many, many millions of dollars that will go towards energy efficiency upgrades and cogeneration and things like that. So that's something that we need to keep our eyes out for, because that we should be seeing something, I think, summer of 23 for NYSERDA. And that should open funding for your building, individual homeowners, the building itself, however it's, you know, managed or owned. So that's something that we can talk about.
Excellent point.
Thanks, Lucian, and thanks, Rosa. I'm just going to kind of interject as well, because I do share Rosa's concerns about the costing issue just on a grand scale. We are asking buildings to do a lot. As you pointed out, Stephen, I think you said that retrofits are going to be required in almost all buildings, or virtually all buildings, I think was the phrase that you said. I wrote it down. And
Yep.
and I have to say that the punitive nature of not doing the work, and it's my understanding, and I don't know whether you confirm it or not, there's already a list of buildings that are going to be subject to the first wave of enforcement beginning next year. And whether those buildings know it or not, these fines and the punitive portion of Local Law 97 is coming if they're not making these upgrades, whether they're in a position to or not, which to me is sort of a tougher part of this program to really get behind, because we have Local Law 11, or FISP now, I guess it's called, where we don't really have that punitive portion, and building owners are able to put up scaffolding and keep them up for years and not do the work because they claim they can't afford it, and they get, you know, filed SWARP or they don't, or they're even filed unsafe and just allowed to continue for that for so long. And I really worry about what that model looks like. And I wonder if you can just very, very quickly describe what the punitive portion of that law looks like. I realize that's not what you're asking us to agree with or adopt in the zoning text amendment. But if you could just remind folks of what that structure looks like. What are the fines?
I'm not familiar with what the fines are for that.
Okay.
I'll check into that and get back to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. And thanks to those with their hands up for letting me interject. So Gerald, Richard, and then Alice.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Stephen, I have so with the increase of growing food on roofs and therefore likely the increase of composting, will this prohibition of fossil fuel equipment also prohibits innovative biogas digesters, which are carbon neutral and could actually be used to fuel gas stoves.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. I have no idea about biogas digesters. So it's an interesting concept. So are those running off of fossil fuels?
Well, no, they're running off of compost, basically.
Then they should be perfectly fine then.
I guess my concern is some sort of unintended consequence with the zoning, prohibiting fossil fuel equipment. Is a gas stove, for example, considered fossil fuel equipment, even if it's running off of a biogas?
I'm not sure about that. I'll check into that for you.
Gerald, I think that the way that it's calculated is the overall building, the collective consumption of gas as supplied by your utility.
So I guess my question then would be, I mean, there's a number of gas stoves in people's apartments and around the city. If those are retrofitted, I mean, are people going to be able to keep those? Is it, because it seems to me there's going to be a huge, even just at the individual property owner's level, there's going to be a gigantic cost to replacing appliances, just your basic everyday appliances.
I think the idea is to have a relatively slow rollout, but I'll get more information on that for you.
Well, and again, the bigger concept here is I mean, I'm totally, obviously, very much for doing away with fossil fuels, but I also wouldn't want to see zoning that's passed and regulations that don't permit innovation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was something I mentioned earlier, is that when we passed Zone Green, 10 years ago, everything moved so fast, and there's more, for example, automated parking facilities, which were not very common, are becoming more common, and different, more people getting EV chargers and EV cars, and it's just things change so fast. So we also don't want things to get bogged down, but we want it to be nimble and flexible too. So.
Well, and on the my other question is on this parking. My understanding currently, I don't have a car in the city, but my understanding is that many of the private parking lots will charge differing fees for various, especially downtown. They'll charge one fee if you're in a gas-powered car and a level or two below grade, whereas if all the electric chargers are at the first level or the second level, and it's an additional, it's more than double the price to be able to park at an EV charger. Is there anything in this whole financing package that's going to help to spread that out a little bit more and help with the price gouging that's happening? Because I mean, there's not really an incentive for people to buy electric cars when you're having to suddenly pay $2,500 a month to park it.
Sure. So the pricing structure is determined by whoever controls the lot, just like any parking garage, right? So if they want to charge, $30 for a half an hour or $30 for 6 hours, they can do that. So there's nothing that I'm aware of that's in the zoning text that tells you how to pay for EV charging stations, but I'll double check on that and get back to you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Gerald. And thanks to Lucian, who put in the chat, if folks see it, a link to the New York Accelerator program, which I just linked to and put in my own building, because there's a portion of that allows you to see what fine might be coming your way. And I got to say, there's a bit of shock and awe right now, given what my building would face if we don't get ourselves compliant. And we're a building with very, very, very minimal gas. So I don't see how this is a problem, but that's a separate issue. So anyway, folks can check that out. I encourage you to do so. This is kind of this is a big deal that I don't know a lot of folks really realize what is coming down the pike in the next year. But anyway, important to point out that city planning isn't the reason we're seeing those restrictions, and it's really what we're seeing in the proposal before us is a opening up of the zoning to try to help buildings to comply. So Richard and then Alice.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick, and thank you, Stephen, for this. This is really extraordinary, major, transformative for sure. I have one additional policy thought, really, in relation to the cost discussion that we're having, which of course we all know is going to be fundamental to whether this is implementable. But that has to do with rental buildings and how the costs will be either passed through to tenants, especially if you're talking rent stabilized or rent controlled tenants, or not passed through to tenants, or in what fashion. I think that's certainly some way, shape, or form that needs to be considered. I don't know, it's not necessarily a zoning question, but it really is part of an implementation question. And I think really essential for our rental community, the enormous rental community in New York. I wanted to also ask you about landmark areas and landmark buildings and how the zoning would apply in those situations.
So any retrofit to a landmark building would still go through LPC. So we're not just opening the doors to putting, wind turbines on top of landmark buildings or anything. So there's still a process for LPC to review things. And if there's a process also, if there's certain things like certifications that have to come to city planning, it'll be a double process. So we think landmark buildings also need to be energy efficient, but we understand that they have special considerations for them. And we totally acknowledge that. And we don't want to do anything crazy to these landmark buildings that would kind of ruin the statue of them being a landmark.
Yeah, I really don't know the answer to this. I live in a landmark building, and there is sometimes the restrictions may not allow this to happen in all of the buildings that really do need to be upgraded. And there needs to be some way to think through the balance of landmark protection as well as innovation here. I think it's essential, and not sure how that's going to get dealt with if it's just thrown into another agency. It needs to be addressed, I think, in some ways up front.
Sure. So I think one thing you could think about is, what we deal with a lot at city planning is when somebody has a landmark building and they want to put like a penthouse unit on top of the building. And we talk about what's visible from the street and how things are seen from the street. So if, for example, solar panels are pushed and you can't see them off the street line, but they're there and they can be put in, that's an example where we think it'd be a good use of solar panels. But again, it'll be reviewed by LPC and the appropriate city agencies.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be enough for the landmark buildings to actually move forward with this. One last question. You said that these proposals don't allow or change the height of wind turbines, but I thought I read somewhere in the materials we had that in fact it was requesting a height increase on shoreline wind turbines. Did I read it wrong?
I don't want to say anything in particular because I'm not exactly sure, but the idea is anything that does related to, zoning districts within the city, anything that goes above a certain height would still have to be reviewed by the City Planning Commission. But I'll get details about the exact nature of that review process and how that relates to anything off the city shoreline.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Richard. I'm going to interject one more time. Sorry, Alice. So Stephen, a really basic and probably a relatively stupid question, but I'm just gonna say it out loud anyway. Is steam bad? Like, where does steam fit in all of this? For buildings that utilize steam as a major source of their heating, is that something they're going to have to stop using?
I have no idea. I'd have to look into that. I'm not sure if how that relates to fossil fuels.
I mean, there's a lot of buildings in Lower Manhattan,
Yeah.
particularly old buildings that have been converted that rely on that source of energy.
Yeah.
Okay, and if that has to be retrofitted, I mean, that is, I don't know, I don't want to say catastrophic, but that's almost completely building altering.
Yeah.
Might as well rip the thing down and start again. Okay, Alice, and then Tammy.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks a lot, Stephen. This is an amazing effort on the part of the department. I can only imagine the blood, sweat, and tears now and to come. I have a lot of questions, and I'm delighted, Patrick, that you were wisely considered that this should be, reviewed a little bit more carefully as we go on the next few months. And I would offer up that we've had the New York Accelerator at the Environmental Protection Committee, which was terrific, and look forward to having a few not-for-profits dealing in carbon neutrality to come. And those might be great times to further discuss this as well, this particular text amendment. One of the things that I think about is that I'm not quite clear as to what is city planning's consideration of resiliency measures like green roofs, heat retention, and this sort of unified review of just the sort of solar panels. Was there some kind of consideration in adding a percentage up to 50% of the roof coverage with solar panels with green roofs, or any other type of, like, this is a very popular thing that people do if they can afford it. It has an aesthetic value, an insulation value that of course solar panels don't, longevity as well. So where did that filter into the conversations, or will that filter in? And if it doesn't, I think it should.
So your question is whether green roofs should be more permissible?
Well, how does the Department of City Planning review the idea of having a resilient absorptive green roof versus advocating for only solar panels on the roofs of these buildings as a retrofit?
Okay, I'll have to get back to you on whether green roofs were discussed by the team on carbon neutrality.
Yeah, it seems like something that should certainly be discussed. The other thing is, these are just sort of not particularly secretarial, but what is there any? I mean, the roof, these rooftop, glass structures that could have, food being produced in them. If I'm not mistaken, today in the city, you can have these, right? You can in fact have these kinds of structures. So what is it the greenhouses, what was it in the city today why do we need this change? So now it sounds like these will not go through ULURP, but there'll be something that makes it easier to build them. Could you just specify what will change with rooftop greenhouses? And again, to Richard's point about, looking at it in terms of landmarks, will community boards have an ability to review anything that's in a non-historic district? In other words, we understand that landmarking requires that there'd be a review, but these are major structures going on top of buildings, which open up a whole can of worms as to exactly, without any FAR cap, what exactly goes on in these, and how do you enforce that people don't actually live in them, and things like that. I'm just curious, a little more detail, if you can provide it, on the rooftop greenhouses, and specifically, what is different now? Is it that they can go up to any height, or what are the limitations?
Sure. So I don't have the exact details, but it's making it more permissible across wider zoning districts. But I'll get the details of what's becoming more permissible and what the change is. Now, your second question was, what's going to be as of right and what's going to be reviewed by the City Planning Commission or the chair related to some of these proposals. Is that correct?
Yeah, and also the community boards, do we filter into any of the review of any of this? In other words, these could be very consequential, roof structures certainly the solar panels going up 15 feet to the edge of a building will generally very much compromise, and maybe they should. I'm not saying that's not a great thing that, we have solar panels, but, I think that, you're blocking people's views or whatever it might be. Just where do we get to weigh in if it happens not to be a landmark building or in a historic district? That's another question I have. And I think I'll probably can save other questions just to email to you, but I would say that I'd like to advocate for us to, as a board, to certainly potentially engage a zoning expert or other professionals who can help this board sift through what's an immense amount of information. So I'm glad we have the time, and I'm happy to also have the ability to take it up in our committee. And lastly, I just have one question about, is there any interest in any companion legislation to the zoning that looks at just the general idea of adaptive reuse of existing buildings in New York City, public buildings, as a concept? And we of course face this, I'm sure, you see Penn Station, we certainly face it down here with the borough-based jail. Is there any kind of position that city planning has taken on adaptive reuse versus demolition and new construction?
I don't think I'm not aware of an official position. We're always happy to have an adaptive reuse of a building. Typically, if a building, to use the jail analogy, if a building has been built to do such a specific use as that, I think it would be hard to convert that to something else. But you may be aware that we are totally looking at, with our other housing initiatives, manufacturing conversions, commercials to residential, and that's an adaptive reuse of other use. So we're definitely on board with trying to do that. Was there specific, other than the prisons example, was there something specifically that?
I think generally somewhere along the line, like other cities in the world, there should be some ability for the city to be required to review before a building goes down, a public city-owned building goes down and is replaced by something. In terms of carbon neutrality, an assessment, a data-based assessment of what is being spent in terms of a carbon output of a demolition versus new construction. We never really see data that's connected to any of this, the sort of cost benefit analysis, if you will. Seems like something the city would really benefit from, so that people really understand, is this better in terms of carbon neutrality? What's the gain here? And that would be true for any building owner. What are we really getting with solar panels versus a green roof versus constructing the facade out of X or Y material? And I don't know how one promotes that, but it seems like a missing link in all of this that would be, a welcome addition to the thinking. Anyway, I get off my soapbox here. Thanks. I hope we can go further on that last point. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alice. Great questions as always. And I'm particularly interested to hear more and an answer about Alice's point, which I agree with, in terms of what is the community board's role in having a say in these structures, whether they're outside a historic or landmark district to begin with. Tammy?
Hey, Stephen, thanks for coming back. I wanted to support Alice beat me to the green roofs question. It was something that came up in the first presentation that came to us. Suggestions were made to go take a look at some of the others, but it's an important part in an urban dense environment to consider other rooftop uses. So we asked at that time in January, the answer, we got was that there would be looking into the green roofs and how that could work within this. So I know you weren't here the first time, I think, when we talked about this. So I'm kind of hoping that we could get an answer a little bit more soon, right?
Yeah.
And then we also talked about, in terms of above grade planters and things like that as alternatives for bioswales and rain gardens, because obviously based on Lower Manhattan and the density, there's difficulty integrating bioswales and rain gardens and things like that into our neighborhood. And so whether or not within the zoning changes you're looking for, we could look at having other types of above grade planters and other aspects added and included in this.
Okay.
And when we're looking at moving away from all kinds of different electric uses and things like that, there's been a lot of conversation lately about whether or not the grid can handle all the electric and the generators that we have that are diesel generators versus, you know, and how they'll operate and what kind of latitude the city is looking at for siting of energy storage systems. Is that detailed anywhere in here?
I don't think it's detailed, but I can tell you that Con Ed has committed to building an energy grid that delivers 100% clean energy by 2040. And it is a concern. We were talking about this years ago during the Bloomberg administration when they were trying to just do taxis as EV vehicles. So it's something that's constantly coming up, and I'll see if there's any other information that I can get related to the energy grid and Con Ed's commitment to fully supporting all this, all of a sudden surge of use for all these electric uses. So
I also would be remiss if I didn't mention it because we have seen so much in Lower Manhattan. Diesel generators were on every corner after Sandy for quite some time. And then there are buildings, for example, like 60 Hudson that requires huge diesel generators. And if you're looking at power outages and potential, what are we looking at with this new text amendment for siting of energy storage systems and generators and things like that?
okay.
That would be important for us to understand down here. And I think the green roofs, Alice took care of that. I think those are all my current questions.
Okay, thanks, Sammy. Stephen, when you're finding out about the Con Ed commitment and that more information on that, can you also see whether there's a commitment from Con Ed in terms of controlling rates and delivery costs? I mean, it just strikes me as once they've got the market captured, they can jack the prices up to whatever they want. Now we're all suddenly seeing, 2-3x in our electric bills, which has happened without these sustainability measures coming into play. So I think that's a really important point that we need to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by effectively handing over a monopoly of energy over to one company or, a series of companies, and that's well regulated. So any information you could provide on that would be helpful. Rosa, then Vicky.
Thank you. My question is actually related to green roofs and specifically the dead load. Just because I passed by Ann Street a lot and I'm seeing all the crushed vehicles from that garage that fell down. And I know that there was some question as to whether that was caused by overloading onto an older building. And so I guess my question is, if we are looking at the conversion of a lot of our rooftops with some of our older building stock to green roofs, which would, then, by the way, I love green roofs and I think we should do them everywhere, just psychologically, but just in terms of, structure, what would be the process for just confirming that some of our older stock buildings are actually capable of taking the increased dead load related to a green roof and then therefore, like water retention and all of that. I don't know, maybe that's getting too geeky, but I think we should look at that.
Yeah, Ann Street just happened, so I mean, it seems like a timely question.
Yeah, and then obviously the same thing would apply to the photovoltaic system and how that would attach to our buildings and all of that other fun stuff. But yeah, I'm sure you guys are all thinking about that, but just I've seen too many crushed carts in the last few days. So
Thanks, Rosa. Vicky, and then I see Lucian with his hand up.
Patrick, I did want to support Rosa's question about dead load. I know that that is an issue, but more importantly, I did want to support your comment about Con Ed sort of becoming a monopoly in terms of cost for their services. That for me is a very large issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. And Stephen is committed to look into that and see if he can get some information on Con Ed's commitments as part of the overall scope of things. Lucian, you do have your hand up, and then Tammy, I see you've raised again.
Thank you, Patrick. Stephen, I'm going to speak for Bob Schneck, who's out sick and he couldn't be here, but I think generally he'd be very excited to read all of the different ways the city has thought to open up the retrofitting and decarbonizing of the building stock and other property. But his statement would have been in support of cladding. I'm happy to see that thought has been paid to the additional cladding of buildings. I have seen a couple of projects where exterior cladding has been essentially put over the older facade. And I know that there are projects outside the United States where the delivery of other sorts of building systems are done through the additional exterior facade and eliminating the need for individual AC units and such. Does DCP expect that the relaxation of the cladding and property line rules will allow for such projects where the cladding is able to move air conditioning or heating into apartment units and allow for buildings to replace really difficult to pull out fossil fuel systems or anything like that?
I don't know. I think it brings up an interesting question because we had some initial cladding regulations in Zone Green from 2012. And like I mentioned earlier, we've been discussing with different, architects and builders and people into sustainability, different ways to improve things. And it would be interesting. I'll look into if they have any examples where or how many buildings did reclad and if what had changed and if that affected the air conditioning systems and things like that. So I mean, it's an interesting question. I can look into that for you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Lucian. Tammy?
I think I wanted to pick up on maybe what other, whether or not DCP has done any study on anticipated flow-through costs for renters, and how that may be. I say that specifically because I know through the resiliency goals and climate change goals for Battery Park City, you have some buildings that now charge for water, and I assume it's a pass-through. I'm not entirely certain, but in the guise of they're trying to be more climate friendly and support lower water usage, there are rental buildings who have gone beyond putting in the low flow, facilities that are needed and things like that. They've actually gone to charging people for water for everything at every outlet, shower, toilet, sink, in everything, or electric is charged for absolutely everything. And it's gas being significantly less than electric being extremely expensive. It is a concern that potentially the byproduct of what we're talking about here could make this city even less affordable for middle and lower income families.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that was mentioned earlier too in relationship to landlords charging more, pushing off costs for retrofitting buildings or any other upgrades to renters. So, yeah, I'll look into what has been discussed internally about that and if there's any cogent response to that.
Yeah, it's even beyond the rent stabilized housing, it's just a point of making even the market rates more expensive. I mean, certainly my priority and concern might be for those who could least afford it to start with. But again, how that would work beyond that and what that does to a city that thrives on having a robust middle income rental community because you can't afford to buy in lower Manhattan anymore
Yeah.
in those categories. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Seeing no other hands up, I want to thank, and recognizing the hour, I really want to thank Stephen for hanging in there. But I particularly want to thank you, Stephen, for what I think has been an exceptionally helpful and thorough presentation to really help us get our hands around this. This is a really big, complex initiative. I'm glad to see that city planning is breaking this out at least into the sort of 3 phases, if you will, for and dealing with just the carbon neutrality piece first. But even that alone is huge. And you did a really expert job of trying to boil it down for us, even though obviously we have a lot of questions. And I want to thank you especially too for so professionally agreeing to go back, get us answers and work with us on it. So this was very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you next month. If not, someone else can come join us. But I think you did such a great job tonight. We hope you're able to come back and answer these questions. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, committee members. And I didn't mean to assume we're not doing a resolution, but we have no reason to push it. And there are so many questions. I think I can recognize the sense of the committee is not to do one. We're going to move on to our last and final item on the agenda, which is a Board of Standards and Appeals application at 346 Broadway, 108 Leonard Street to renew the term of the use exception for operating a public garage. We have presenters from the Board of Managers at 108 Leonard Condominium. And we have folks from their architects and presumably their land use council who are with us as well. So I'm not sure who's going to kick the presentation off, but if you will just introduce yourself to the committee and introduce who's here to join you. Quickly, if you don't mind, given the hour, present the application, let us know what we need to do, and we'll talk. Jim, it looks like, right? Jim, I need you to come off mute.
Okay, how's that?
There we are.
Okay, great. Yes. Thank you, Patrick. Jim Power from Kramer 11 here on behalf of the Board of Managers of the 108 Leonard Condominium. I'm joined by Alex Olson, Vice President of the Board of Managers, and Tom Furman from SLCE Architects. This is an application to the BSA to renew a use district exception to allow use of the basement level of the building at 108 Leonard Street as a parking garage. Lucian, do you have the slides there that I sent along, or I can share my
Sure,
screen?
I'm going to pull them up right now.
You can go to the next slide. So 108 Leonard Street, also known as 346 Broadway, familiar to many of the board, I'm sure. It's a full block site bounded by Broadway, Leonard, and Lafayette Streets and Catherine Lane. It's improved with the 14-story residential building. Next slide, please, Lucian. The building is a designated landmark, and portions not including the garage are an interior landmark. The City of New York owned the building from 1968 until 2013, at which time it was sold to our client's predecessor. It was converted to residential condominium in 2019, and it will have retail and community facility ground floor space. The use district exception to allow the garage was originally granted by the BSA in 1956. It was reinstated, amended, and extended in 2013. In 2017, the BSA granted a substantial compliance change, reducing the number of parking spaces from 110 to 33. Next slide, please. The garage is located on the basement, first floor level of the building. There is access by 2 entry doors and a curb cut on Leonard Street. There is a reservoir parking area at the entrance and space for approximately 33 cars. The garage is operated 24 hours and it's attended. There have been no complaints about its operation. And we're asking for another 10-year renewal of the term. Finally, I would note that the Board 1 did not issue a recommendation on the last renewal application in 2013. I believe that was because the board was deeply involved at that time in the disposition of this building by the city and did not feel any need to weigh in on the renewal, on that renewal application. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Jim, thanks for the succinct presentation. I appreciate that. I'll start off. You mentioned the community center, and I guess I'm old enough to remember the 2012 ULURP. And I'm wondering what is of the community center? How's that looking, and what's the status of it all?
I believe that discussions are still ongoing between the city and DCA, the DCLA, Downtown Community Television, which is the designated tenant. That's all the information we really have at this point. It's really in the city's hands.
Okay. Alice?
Thanks. Yeah, I think they're coming again soon to talk a little bit about that very question. So thanks for asking it, Patrick, about the community center. When we look at the interior at Landmarks, I'm just curious. I was a little confused. I hadn't seen the plan until you've just put it up there. I didn't have it in the packet we had, but why in 2017 was the parking reduced from 110 spaces to 33?
Part of the reason was because the historic approval was for parking both in the cellar and the basement levels. The parking was in the cellar level was eliminated from the plan, and so it's just limited to the basement area now, which is substantially smaller.
Okay, what happens in the cellar now?
Oh, I guess Alex Olson can answer that question. There,
Yeah,
Alex?
hi, good evening. Yeah, in the cellar level now, the building has amenities for the residents, so it's no longer parking.
So what are those amenities, if I can ask?
There's a fitness center, lounge, and games rooms for kids.
And this is just for the residents in the building?
Correct.
So is this BSA basically asking for both those levels? So as a board, we're approving the amenities in the cellar as well as the parking in the basement? Sorry, I'm not clear on that.
No, so the BSA approval is for operation of the parking garage in the basement level. That's the extent.
And
of
there's no part of this that has anything to do with the cellar. So the cellar was removed from this application?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
When was that done?
That was in 2017 in conjunction with the reduction from 110 to 33 spaces.
And the board did vote on that at that time?
They did not vote on they treated that as what they call a substantial compliance determination. They considered it a minor enough change that they did it administratively without a public hearing.
So the board did not have an opportunity to weigh in on that? I'm talking about the community board. Community board 1 did not weigh in on that particular decision in 2017.
I'm
right?
pretty sure that was not before the community board 1, correct?
Okay. I think those were my key questions. I think yeah, okay.
Thanks, Alice. That spurs some questions in my mind. Alex, you're listed as the vice president of the board of managers. Is that the board of managers of the entire condominium?
Correct.
So that's not the residential portion, right? You don't live there.
No, I'm not a resident.
You work with the sponsor, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the sponsor is still in control of the building?
Yes.
Okay. And this is one of the commercial condominium units that'll go along with a residential component, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah, that's a good summary.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the dynamics of it. When is the sponsor expected to turn over I guess, control of the residential portion of the condominium to the residents? Is that sort of provided for in your offering plan, and are you close enough in your sales to be to that point?
It is detailed in the offering plan. I don't think I can really comment on sales, but the offering plan does control. We already have a a board in place, so I think that's a positive thing. And then
Sure.
the plan will control when sort of the sponsor moves along and the residents can take over.
Okay, but the sponsor still owns the commercial units, including the garage, right?
Currently.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot that one other question I had, Patrick, was the 33 remaining, or the 33 parking spots are again just for the building residents, or is that for the public?
So the garage has approval to operate on a public basis. The spaces, there's enough demand within the building that the spaces are, at this point, exclusively used by the tenants.
So, okay, I guess the answer is it's for the building. Okay, thank you.
Right. Jim, when is the BSA hearing?
I think we've been told it will be in July. I don't have oh, I'm sorry, they did send me the date. I think they said July 11th or 12th.
Okay.
Get that for you.
Patrick, it's Vicky. Would you mind repeating the issue at hand?
Yeah, I'm happy to summarize it. Well, I'll have Jim summarize that for us and what they're specifically asking.
Thank you.
But first, I
Yes.
want to recognize Richard, who had his hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if you're providing electric charging capability in the garage.
Yes, the infrastructure is there for EV capability. Yes.
Great.
Lucian?
Thanks, Patrick. In light of the recent garage collapse, have you had an engineer go through within the last couple of months to certify that structurally this garage is sound to bear the weight of, vehicles, especially as we move over to EVs, the additional weight that will impose on the structure?
Not in the last couple of months, no. But I mean, there hasn't been a reason to. The building was recently had a complete refurbishment, restoration, conversion. Everything is new on the inside, and that was all, of course, obviously designed by a structural engineer and filed with Department of Buildings, and all due course has been followed.
And the basement was rebuilt. The floor was rebuilt. Report, I should say.
Yeah, there was a new pour there. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's not a standalone garage, right? Like it's connected and part of the building structure. So as goes the garage, goes the residential component, correct?
Yeah, you're right, Patrick.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Does any part of the garage access, that would be, I guess, the basement, into the landmark areas of the lobby? Is there a direct access at any point from one floor to the other, from landmark to non-landmark?
Yes, there is a connection point from the landmark to the non-landmark portion where the parking sits. There's a vestibule, so that sort of bridges that portal that you're describing.
Will it be modified? Is this part of what will be presented to the board in the landmarks portion of this renovation or application?
We haven't filed an application with landmarks, but I do know what you're referencing. No, that's not part of that banking hall space. No.
So it's not being modified. Okay.
No, that's not part of the modification. But those folks will present to you in due course, but that's not within that area.
So just to recap, how long will this last? So the last one came due, or will come due in September. Is this now another 10-year period that's attached to this application, or is this forever, or what?
We are
This
requesting another 10-year renewal, and that's the ordinary course at the BSA. So,
10-year renewal.
yes.
All right. So it sounds like in 2017, you removed the possibility of parking 77 cars, if I'm doing the math right here, and allowed for that to then become a gym and a private amenity for the building. I think that's correct.
Yes.
I see you nodding. Okay, that's what I figured. Thanks.
Thanks, Alice. All right, Jim, if you can, I guess, summarize what the action is that's being requested at the BSA level, and what the I guess favorable or unfavorable disposition from the community board's point of view is that you're seeking.
Yes, just to clarify though, the BSA's hearing will be on either July 10th, Monday, July 10th, or Tuesday, July 11th. We are requesting an extension of the term of the use district exception to allow continued operation of the garage with 33 vehicles in the basement level of the building for an additional 10 years. And we would appreciate the board's support in light of the historic operation and the fact that it's been operated well and without complaints since under current management.
Okay. All right.
So can I just clarify one thing now? Sorry,
Sure.
Patrick.
Feel free, Richard.
We're approving this as a public space, essentially, right? As a public amenity, a garage, but it's actually not available to the public. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. So I wouldn't characterize it as a public amenity in the sense that a plaza is a public amenity. It's approved as a public garage, meaning that it has the ability to accept cars from non-tenants of the building, legally speaking. It has the legal authority to do that. It has also the discretion to accept parking from only its tenants in this case, because there's sufficient demand within the building for those spaces.
Patrick, this is what my question was about. Yeah.
Right. So this isn't a public space, committee members. This is a privately owned space, but the variance, for lack of a better term, is being sought because of, Jim, help me out. What is it? Because of the subterranean?
It's effectively a public parking garage, like any other public parking garage one might go to under private management and ownership, and has the ability to accept cars from off-site. That's what makes it a public garage. But in this case, it's currently limited to use by tenants of the building.
Thanks. Lucian, and then Vicky, we really should wrap this up, guys.
Yeah, so I think one way the committee could look at this is that if at any point the interest of building tenants waned so that the parking garage were not being used at capacity, they have the option to open its use to the public to maintain occupancy levels and keep it profitable.
That's correct.
Yeah, and okay, I'll hold my comments, but Vicky?
I'm sorry, that was my point. If it's a public garage and it has a limited number, then it's not really a public garage.
Well, I think they have the ability to accept customers from anywhere in the public. I think that's where the word public kind of
Right,
is
but
hanging us up.
past there 33 spots for private use, then don't call it a public garage, right?
I think it's legally it's a public garage, but its use is currently an accessory garage. It's being limited by their decision, not by the law.
Yeah, well,
Right, so
I guess,
which is it? That's all I'm asking. Which is it?
Alex, maybe you can answer this question and sort of clear it up. Are these spaces being offered to buyers of the condominiums for purchase, or is it going to be operated as, you know, I don't want to use a brand name, but think of your, any garage on your street that's got the parking sign on the side of the building, that's run by a private company, but that owners of the condominiums will have first dibs on those spaces, and then if they're not used up, they'll rent them out. Is that pretty much the business model? And Jim or Alex, either of you guys can answer that.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Apologies, Patrick.
That's
I
okay.
just said that it's a good summary, what you just said.
Okay, but it's kind of an either or. So that are you selling the spaces with the units?
No.
Right. So you're going to be offering them first to people who live in the building. Yeah, and then if they don't gobble them up, then you have a guy with a flag out on the street saying, "Hey, park here." All right. Does that make sense, Vicky?
I'm sorry. Yes, it does. Thank
Okay.
you.
Alice?
I'm sorry to belabor this, but I just want to make it clear to this committee that this board did not vote to allow that the 110 spaces, which you might have allowed for more access for the public, to be reduced, and correct me if I'm wrong, to 33 without our approval. And so now we're being asked to sort of grandfather this in for another 10 years, where clearly this is not a public facility anymore. This will be a private garage. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we never agreed to reducing the 110 spaces, if I'm not mistaken. And you,
Yeah, that's a good point. I may have
Thank
misunderstood
you.
that. I thought we took no position. That was the letter signed by Anthony. But Jim, could you maybe put that back up?
No, that letter was before this 2017. Wasn't the letter from 2013 from Anthony? Maybe no.
Thank you, Alice. Exactly my point.
Yeah.
So this letter was from 2013, and it related to the extension of the term at that time and continuation of the 110 spaces that existed at that time. We subsequently went to the board, to the BSA, and they agreed to reduce it to 33.
Right. So when Anthony signed this, there were 110 spaces, and somewhere along the line in 2017, somehow we were cut out of the deal, and now there are 33 spaces. Part of our parking is now a private gym. I mean, I don't mean to be a little bit snarky here. But
I agree with
think it's
you.
important to make it clear. It's fine, no problem, but just make it clear. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's a good point. And having
Could
the
I just
information-
make a point, Patrick? When sponsor came in to purchase the building, we purchased the building from DCAS from the city, and those spaces were for employees of DCAS only. It wasn't public.
Okay. All right. So I guess I'll start first in terms of my thoughts, at least, and then love to hear from everybody else and see where the sense of the committee goes. But I guess I don't have a problem with this. I'm particularly it's important to me that the sponsor is currently in control of the building. So this isn't as though some action is being taken to control this garage against an otherwise in control residential management board. It just seems to me to make good business sense, although I take Alice's point that, there was this reduction in space. We weren't consulted about it, or at least didn't have an opportunity to weigh in about it. And I don't know whether that affects my thinking ultimately or not. It just doesn't make us feel that great. But otherwise, I don't really have a problem with this, particularly, as I said, because as Alex has pointed out, they're in control of the building. So what do other folks think? And just unmute and chime in. And oh my gosh, Detta, I'm so sorry. Before we do that, I now see Detta, who's a public member of CB1, has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I just had a question they're applying for the 10-year renewal from the Board of Standard and Appeals for what was it, a use district exception or a use group exception?
It's called a use district exception because that was the term that was used in the pre-1961 zoning.
Okay, but if you didn't get this use district exception renewed, what would that mean? Would that mean you can't have any parking?
That's correct.
So right, so these 33 spots, if you don't get that exception renewed, then it's no spots.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Was my curiosity.
Thanks, Detta. A good point. That puts more cars on the street. Okay. Feel free to unmute, folks. Who's in favor of this? Who's against?
I'm fine
Who's
with it.
benevolent? Okay.
Wait a minute, I have one question that Detta just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but so if that were to be true, that you did get the garage, would that space be a public space, the garage, or not?
No, the space is owned, it's part of the building, it's not a public space, there's no restriction on its use, it's, yeah, it can be used
It
for
would
whatever.
just be more amenities for the
decided
building?
to use it for.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just, in a way, it seems odd that we're even weighing in on this, that the public, we have some role to play here, because normally that would mean there'd be a public benefit, and this really doesn't seem like there is one way or the other than keeping the generic one of keeping cars off the streets. So it's a little puzzling as to why it comes to us, but given that there's, I don't know of a way to get a public benefit out of this, unless somebody has a clever idea. Can't see a reason to object.
Yeah, it benefits the residents of the building. There's no negative impact on the community, it doesn't seem. So I think we should just approve it.
Yes, can I make a motion to approve?
You can, and I'll second it.
Okay.
And we'll do this one by affirmation as well. So we'll assume that you are a yes, unless you unmute now and tell me that you are opposed. Is anyone opposed? Are there any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain on the fact that I feel that in 2017, I might have voted against it.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any recusals? All right, with that, the motion passes. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your presentation and working through it with us as we try to understand what's going on. So that's the last item on our agenda, folks. We're done for the night. Thanks so much for hanging in there. Obviously, we're going to have a lot to go through in our June meeting, as well as we work through the carbon amendment as well. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks,
Good
Patrick.
night, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good
I'm
night.
away in June.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.